Good evening. Welcome to the April 16th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you've joined us. We have a full house tonight. If you're watching at home, we're glad you've joined us there as well. As is our custom, we'll begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin.
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Commissioner Tully.
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. We have a full house tonight. We have some guests, some neighbors. See a lot of first-time faces. So if you'll bear with me a minute, we're going to go through some expectations about public comments and how we run our meetings. First and foremost, this village council meeting is, as you know, open to the public, but it's at the same time not a public meeting. What does that mean and why does it matter? It matters because there are some rules which need to be followed in order to allow the village council to conduct the business of the village. The public comments portions of our agenda are important. They are valued parts of every meeting. At several points during this meeting, there will be opportunity for public comment, including each active agenda item and each first reading agenda item. Please remember those are opportunities to make comments that you'd like the council to hear. They're not the beginning of a debate. There's additional opportunity for input not specific to an active or first reading agenda topic in just a few minutes under the public comments portion of our meeting. So if you're here for something that is not on the agenda and you have some thoughts you'd like to share with us, that's the time for that. As I said before, council sessions are not open debates. These meeting rules are important for us to follow because we are conducting business on behalf of all the residents and businesses of Downers Grove. If you've been following our meetings, you'll know that it is seldom, if ever, that people are cut off. We encourage people, we want people to stick with the 5-minute rule. You'll see me waving my hand trying to encourage people to move along if we get up near that, but we do want everybody to have a chance to speak. Beyond tonight's meeting, there are a variety of additional opportunities to engage your council. Our e-remarks system, the CRC system, Coffee with the Council, we saw some of you folks on Saturday, direct email, and by phone. Every one of your council members spends time in person off this dais making themselves available to residents and businesses across the community. And those one-on-one conversations are frankly the most valuable. Your council's listening, we're taking notes, we're considering what's said, we're reading the emails that have been sent. And please know that often some time is needed to reflect on these comments. You may not get an instant answer or response from the council, but it doesn't mean we're not listening. It doesn't mean we're not considering everything that we've received for input. If you do plan to speak tonight, please keep the following in mind when you come to the podium. Please state your name for the record. We'd like to know who we're talking to. Address your comments to me as the chair of the meeting. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Avoid repeating what others have already said. I've said this before, when we have big crowds on big subjects, the 99th time is not any more effective than the 79th time. Please keep your comments to one visit to the podium per subject. And remember that your comments are most effective when they focus on subjects within the scope of Downers Grove Village governance. Finally, please be aware that we may get to a point, depending on how the meeting goes, where we feel the need to end public input in order to continue to conduct our business. I don't think we've done that in any time that I can remember. We're all going to try and avoid it, but we're also not going to make decisions on behalf of your village at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I also am changing our agenda just a little bit tonight. It won't be much of an impact, but I think it's important. We have a presentation that was scheduled for the end of this meeting that has to do with Guiding DG. Guiding DG, as you know, is a very important initiative the village is on. We have some consultants who we'd like to go ahead and let them move on with their evening. So we're going to move an item on here. It's listed on the agenda as MOT 2024, INF 2024-10350, Information Guiding DG Discussion. You'll find that on your agenda. We're going to move that up to right now, and then we'll resume the balance of the agenda. Dave?
And with that great introduction, Mayor Barnett, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight Nick Davis, a principal at Halcyon Levine, who is the lead consultant on our guiding DG collection of plans and policy documents, particularly updating our comprehensive plan. He will give us an update on community engagement efforts. Nick.
Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you. I appreciate being given the opportunity to give an overview of the community engagement that's been done up to this point for the guiding DG efforts. I'm going to go over a couple of different things. I'm going to go over the website, community surveys, map.social, community kickoff event. I want to recap some of the stakeholder interview discussions. We'll talk about Insight DG, and then some of the social media impacts that we've had. So the website was launched on March 8th. And as of April 11th, we've had over 2,700 website views, which is great. The community surveys, the survey was completed as of April 11th. We've had over 521 community surveys filled out. We've had over 70 specific business surveys filled out as part of that. And as part of the Bike and Ped project, we've also had 314 surveys filled out. So a really good turnout in terms of the community surveys. We'll continue to keep track of those and keep those up to date. Some of the key takeaways, things like how long have you lived in Downers Grove, kind of testing my eyes here. About 70% of the community has lived here in over 10 years, which is a significant number, something that we'll have to consider as we go through the plan. Where do people work? There's quite a mix in through there. Sorry, it's a little fuzzy for my eyes. I don't have this quite memorized. But so those that work here but live somewhere else were the largest percentage. They work somewhere else. We have working from home is that lighter blue. You can see it's about 25%. And then I'm retired is that orange, which is coming close to about 30%. And then working somewhere else is that darker blue, just a little over 30%. So you can see that mix, these charts, those are again considerations that we're going to need to be thinking about as we move through some of the plan recommendations about where people work and how long people have lived here. How old are you? So those are some of the breakdowns for the demographics of people that live here. So that lighter yellow up at the top, just under, it's probably around like 8%, is 25 to 34. 36 to 44 is that lighter blue, just over probably like 23%. That 40 to 65 or 40 to 55 is the red, so just over 15%. And then an older demographic, so 55 to 64 in that purple is close to 20%, and closer to about 23% is the 66 to 74. So again, just taking into consideration who's filling out these surveys, what the age brackets are, and tying that back to some of the plan's recommendations will be a big part of this. And then how do you identify your race and or ethnicity? So white is about 93%, 92%. And then there's a pretty small percentage for the rest of these different race and or ethnicities. So again, just benchmarking that against your current demographics. There's some considerations about who's filling out the survey. And those are some of the questions that maybe you have, and we can talk about that a little bit later. Map.social. So Map.social is an online mapping tool that you're able to provide recommendations similar to a visioning exercise that we'll do in the future. As of April 11th, we've had 24 maps created. So that means 24 unique users have created their own maps. And then of that, we have 84 features. Features are things like community assets, problematic intersections. It's a pretty good distribution, mostly along corridors. There's some in some of the residential areas, but a lot of for instance, the problematic intersections at some of the key intersections along some of the major roads throughout the community. This is also a tool that we'll continue to use to inform some of the more design-centric recommendations as part of the plan. Community kickoff event. So April 4th had a fantastic turnout, very successful event, received a lot of positive feedback from the community and those that participated. We had 54 completed postcards, so people that came in and provided some additional information. We had 103 names on the sign-in sheet. Others attended. They were trying to keep track as a team about how many people participated, but we have 103 sort of official participants, but a lot of people kind of coming in and out during that event. It was really successful. We had multiple stations, and again, a lot of good feedback as we went through that process. Stakeholder interviews. So also as of April 11th, for the comprehensive plan, we've had 25 specific stakeholder discussions, focus group discussions. The Bike and Ped plan, we've had we have 19 stakeholder The streetscape plan, we've talked to 11 different stakeholders, and then the sustainability plan's at 8. Inside DG, so the spring 2024 issue is featuring the guiding DG sent out to 24,000 mailing addresses. Again, just trying to get the word out about the different projects. In that, there's a nice letter that kind of just talks about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. So again, just whatever we can do to sort of get the word out there through different avenues, be it the workshops that are being conducted, the project website, using map.social, using Inside DG and those different resources, just trying to reach as many people as we can. Speaking of that, so we've had 5 posts across all these different platforms, through all these different platforms since March 8th. Through Facebook, there's been a total post impressions of about 21,728. Total post reactions is 20,118. And then engagement, so specific engagement through this Facebook posts have been about 1,500. Next door, the total post impressions are 20,418, and X views are 2,775. So again, really good outreach in terms of the social media and what those impacts have been, and then just continuing to use these resources to get the word out about the different projects. So with that, any questions? Do you want me to go back to any slides? Anything you want to maybe know a little bit more about?
Council questions? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I said last time, great work on the kickoff event, and seeing all this stuff come to fruition is really exciting. I did just have a couple questions. We don't have a separate Facebook page for Guiding DG, right? It's just we're using the village to promote these posts?
Correct.
Okay. I think maybe one of the things we should be looking at as an analysis, maybe we can go back and take a look at how many more followers the village received once these were pushed out. That will show, I think, an interest in this specific initiative, so we can look at that based on the dates those things are posted. I would be interested to see that. No rush. When all the other statistics come in, I'd like to see that. Also on the surveys, I'm curious at this point in the engagement that maybe you've had with other municipalities, sort of what that looks like as a percentage of our population. 50,000, got about 500, and maybe what we might expect or shoot for. I know we talked a little bit about this early on, and I feel like it is an important metric to be looking at.
Yeah, so I guess there's no number to shoot for.
Okay.
I wish there was. If I said it, it's the one we would go for, and that's not really the intent. I would continue to use the different resources to engage people and get the word out.
Yeah.
There's no magic number in terms of the percentage of your population to, what we're trying to accomplish. We're not doing statistically valid survey. But that being said, I think these are really good numbers all across the board.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say any one of them are, outpacing, another community or another plan that we've done. I don't think any of them have been underwhelming. I think you're right where you want to be. I think we just continue to get the word out through these different resources. I think we can talk about different ways to maybe get more people to participate in the surveys, the online surveys. And that's really the best we can do. Trying to get people. I wish I could make everyone here take the survey tonight. But it's giving people the opportunity through different. You got to tell people like 3 or 4 different ways.
Sure.
That's just the reality. So we should be tracking what's successful. I think that's a really good point. We can talk, with the village about what are we seeing in Facebook and pick up. What are you seeing in X? What are we seeing when the pushes go out on the project website? That type of thing. So.
And then I'm super encouraged that the Bike and Ped survey followed such a high percentage as it pertains to the community survey, which is great. So I think that process, I was candidly a little concerned about how that was going to waterfall into it, and I think it's done great. And on that note, I would suggest everybody here who's interested to go to Guiding DG, find the surveys and fill them out. It's super important to what we're doing, and I think you'll see that work. I think the last thing is just in terms of the number of residents who have been here for 10 years or less. Mm-hmm. If there's any sort of effort that we can do to look to that group, super encouraged, and why I love this town. That folks who have been here over 10 years are highly engaged. I think it is important to try to seek more representation from those who maybe haven't been here as long. But other than that, my feedback, I think everything's been going really well. I've received feedback from business owners and residents alike on how much they enjoyed the kickoff event and also these smaller groups, and I just thank you for the continued work.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments, suggestions, things you want us to consider as we move forward?
Yep, I'll echo a lot of Commissioner Gilmartin's comments. I also got some really positive feedback from residents and businesses. I also am interested in how we can engage some of those newer residents, knowing that, you know, our longer-term residents, we know are very engaged, which is wonderful, but it would be great to hear from some of those. And kind of piggybacking off of that, maybe Commissioner Davenport and I spent a little bit of time in Downers Grove South today as a part of a local government panel, just talking about what local government does and how people can get involved. And I know that we both tried to push this out to some of the young folks and the high schoolers. And I know at one point, you know, we had discussed a little bit more of a plan. So we do have a plan to try and engage some of the young people, right? And hopefully then kind of bring them into the survey as we have those conversations. So would you mind talking a little bit about kind of the youth engagement pieces?
Yep, so some of the upcoming events include, so there are some pop-up events, and I think that's probably a big solution that we'll want to maybe address some of these concerns that you have now in terms of how do you reach people that, you know, aren't participating in a more traditional setting. So who's attending these open houses, who's doing the more traditional online surveys. These pop-up engagement events, we're going to do an ice cream truck in June 15th in different locations, you know, just trying to engage people, you know, where they're at. That's a successful way of bringing people to the process, because you take it to them where they're going to be. We have some pop-up engagements at Rotary Fest, which is on June 22nd, and then there's going to be, and that's really staying in theme with the current issues and opportunities that we're gathering. And then later on in July and August, we'll have a second round of pop-up events, more specific to visioning. So starting to move away from the issues and problems, and really starting to move into what should some of the solutions be, what can the plan or the plans provide recommendations for. So again, I think that's a great way of starting to target areas of the community that you want to make sure you're getting feedback from, and different residents, you know, different business owners, people who maybe haven't been participating along the way. So again, just taking the outreach to them is a big part of that. There's also DIY kits. So I would say if there's people who can't make the typical meeting times that we've hosted, and we completely understand that. Those DIY, the do-it-yourself kits, they're available through village staff. You can come and conduct a meeting just like we would conduct at a public setting, but you can do it at a book club. You can do it, you know, whatever your events might be. A lot of church organizations typically conduct them. Again, you're taking the outreach out to the people where people are commonly gathering, you know, on a weekly or monthly basis, and gathering the same kind of feedback and plugging it back into our overall outreach. So a lot of different ways to participate. I'd say we've done the more traditional, be it in person, and also when I say traditional now, online is a pretty traditional way to do this, but the pop-up I think are a bit more immersive, a different way to engage, a different way to grab people that, you know, we typically don't see at our standard meetings.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for
Appreciate
being
you
here.
giving us your time. Thanks.
We're trying to do monthly updates on this, so if you're interested, follow along. We'll do another council session here come up in May. That does not conclude the manager's report. That's just the first part of it, Mayor.
Not off the hook, Dave. We'll come back to you. All right, we're going to move on, as I said, with the regularly published agenda. Item 3 on our agenda are proclamations. I have 2 of them this evening. Proclamations in Downers Grove are opportunities typically for the mayor to highlight either issues or events or other goings-on that he thinks are important enough to lend the village's name to them. It's a little bit of an exercise of branding, if you will, and trying to add a little bit of authority and emphasis behind certain subjects. 2 tonight I have are both very closely related. One has to do with Earth Day and the other has to do with Arbor Day. Whereas the first Earth Day was enacted in 1970 and engaged over 20 million Americans to advocate for a cleaner environment. Whereas humankind continues to face the real global challenges affecting every community, including degradation of ecosystems, food and water shortages, global and local climate changes. Whereas all species play a unique role in the complex web of life and contribute to the ecosystem services on which all life on Earth depends, and hence protecting our species is crucial to the survival of this planet and its inhabitants. Whereas many plants, wild animals, and pollinators live in urbanized landscapes and cities, therefore we have a responsibility to examine the ecological impacts of their actions and consider how to protect biodiversity. Whereas we are all caretakers of our planet, and our obligation to combat climate change should start in each of our own lives, and our cities should focus attention on reducing the environmental burden that results from the delivery of municipal services. Whereas environmental education, resource conservation, waste reduction, and environmental protection are necessary to ensure a sustainable future. Whereas it is understood that sustainability will only be achieved by meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations. Whereas Earth Day is an annual reminder of the constant need for environmental education, stewardship, commitments, and sustainability efforts. Whereas every year on April 22nd, men, women, and children across the world participate in environmental stewardship activities such as stream cleanups, planting trees, educational events, and other ways of celebrating sustainable accomplishments. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, have the distinct honor of proclaiming April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day, and I encourage all residents, businesses, and institutions to participate in programs and activities that will protect our environment and contribute to a healthy, sustainable future, dated the 16th day of April, 2024. Another proclamation at this time of the year has to do with Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed the Nebraska Board of Agriculture set aside a special day for the planting of trees, and the first Arbor Day was observed by the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, reminding us that one person's initiative can make a lasting and meaningful difference. Whereas the last Friday in April has been designed as Arbor Day to encourage the planting of trees and their care and protection from insects, diseases, and mistreatment that destroy their beauty and usefulness. Whereas trees improve the physical environment of our community by producing oxygen, absorbing carbon dioxide, reducing corrosion of topsoil by wind and water, assisting in the mitigation of stormwater accumulation, and providing habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees add much more to our community by providing beauty and moderating temperature, thereby helping reduce heating and cooling needs, increasing property values, bringing about a sense of place and well-being among the concrete and asphalt of urban America, and enhancing the economic vitality of business areas, thereby improving the quality of life for years to come. Whereas the Village of Downers Grove has received national recognition for nearly 4 decades of its tree care program by again being named Tree City USA for our community's management and care of nearly 23,000 trees located in public parkways. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 26, 2024, to be Arbor Day in the Village of Downers Grove, and urge all residents to plant and care for their trees now and for future generations. Dated the 16th day of April, 2024, Downers Grove, Illinois. Item 4 on our agenda, minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the April 9th, 2024 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5, public comments. This is the portion of the meeting, as I alluded to before, where we take and entertain public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here with some comments for us that are not on one of the future agenda items coming up a little later this evening, please come on down to the podium.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Selma Moberg. I have been a member of the Downers Grove community for 30 years. And I'm very grateful that she brought up Sterling Morton. I worked for the Arboretum for many years, and he is the father of Joy Morton, who created the Morton Arboretum. So thank you for that. My dad, well, let me jump back. I am here particularly for 902 Maple this evening, and in no way want to diminish what's going on at the library. But my dad had a lot of funny sayings. One of his favorites is loyalty only runs as deep as one's pockets, meaning if you share secrets over drinks, they will probably be kept safe, unless what you're spilling has an economic impact on the person you're sharing it with. Why do people continue to believe that 902 Maple project is a done deal? Because someone here said it was. Words are impact. Words like done deal have the same meaning over drinks as they do in this chamber. Words like don't come with a take back or do over I would think that a polished politician would understand that. This chapter of my life puts me at Maple and Washington intersection no fewer than 6 times each day. The most recent traffic study provided by the village indicates that over 8,000 cars pass through that intersection every day. I'm not a traffic expert, but I believe that Washington, Maple, one of the busiest side street intersections in the village. I also know that I witness at least 5 very close calls at that intersection every week. Bless you. Adding parking for even one additional car that empties into that intersection is a horrible decision. This isn't one car. The max occupancy for this building is 34 residents. I'm not very good at math, but I believe that means there is the potential for far more than one additional car emptying directly into the intersection. I would invite anyone responsible for voting on this issue in the future to take an hour out of your morning to stand at that intersection between 7:30 and 8:30. If you don't have an hour, stand there at 8 a.m. Also, stand there during even rush hour from about 4:30 to 6-ish. You will really only need a few minutes to understand the immense safety concerns with this intersection. This is the pathway for hundreds of school-age kids to get their favorite downtown spots, to get to their favorite downtown spots. While you are here, standing here, ask yourself how safe you would feel letting your kids cross there. Only then will you begin to understand the passion fueling so many of your constituents. As I was looking out my house this evening, I happened to be taking my garbage cans down to the end of the driveway, and I looked down at Washington and Maple. I saw a little boy on his bike for a good solid 10 minutes, fearful of crossing the street. He kind of wanted all the cars to go away, but they weren't going away. So he just kind of backed away from the intersection. And I stood there for about 8 to 10 minutes, and he still would not cross because it is very dangerous. So I want to make one thing perfectly clear tonight. The community does not want 902 built. Thank you.
Good evening. Hillary Dank, 433 Wilson Street, Downers Grove. First of all, thank you for the proclamation about Earth Day. I do encourage people to please not mow their lawns until Mother's Day. Let those dandelions grow. They're great for pollinators. Just a little aside. But I'm mostly here to invite all of you to participate in an event that the League of Women Voters and AAUW will be co-hosting on the 24th of April. I want to thank the village for granting our permit to do a march to protest Equal Pay Day. So unfortunately, we still are in a world where women are not paid equally to men. So we're doing a march to protest and to ask for equality in pay. The Equal Pay Day has improved. The Equal Pay Day for all women is March 12th, and that's the date in this year that women are paid equally to men for 2023. So that's what we're measuring. For Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander women, the Equal Pay Day is April 3rd. For LGBTQ+ Equal Pay Awareness Day is June 13th. For Black women's Equal Pay Day is July 9th. Mom's Equal Pay Day is August 7th. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Women's Equal Pay Day is August 28th. Latina Equal Pay Day is October 3rd. And Native Women's Equal Pay Day is November 21st. We've got a lot of work to do. I'd love to see all of you there. We're going to be meeting at the train station at 5:30. We'll start marching at 6 and end up at another round for a discussion at 6:30. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Hi. My name's Barbara Alonso. I live at 4918 Lee. I've lived there almost 40 years. I love this community. I want to give a little bit of feedback regarding all the street modifications, so to speak, and signage. Particularly, this is a lot of what has been done on Prairie Avenue between Main and Belmont. And what has happened as a result of the study is there are so many signs. Like every 10 feet, there is another sign, a school sign, a crossing sign, a no parking sign, a bike route sign. And when you drive down the street, I mean, Prairie is a beautiful street, and you drive down the street, especially at night, it looks like a runway. There's just hundreds of signs that all do the same thing. And I just feel like we've gone overboard with that, and I think it really destroys the looks of the neighborhood. The other thing is that some double yellow lines were also painted down several of the residential streets, including mine. And I don't understand why. It makes it look like a county road. And truthfully, within about 2 months after they set the 2 lines down, most of it had scraped off. So now it looks like a really old county road, and it's really disturbing because, again, I just think it ruins the quality of the neighborhood. So I'd like to suggest that after we do a project like this, that we then look at, did we accomplish what we needed to? And do we have to make some changes based on what has been put up, so to speak? The signage, I just think, is just over the top. And that's what I just wanted to offer. I feel like it's really made a mar, so to speak, on the neighborhood. But thank you for all the work that you do. Appreciate it.
Good evening. Scott Richards here tonight to address one of the issues. You can tell it's spring because the restaurants have again set up camp and a great deal of our parking spaces downtown. And I don't know now last year I questioned one of the trustees here as far as, is this a permanent thing or is this, how long is it going to last? And I was told then, because I inquired, is this free for them, or are they going to pay? Are they paying for it? And I was told that yes, they are paying a fee, which they should be. But it's going to get to the point of just downtown right now. I don't know how many. It's ugly, and it's crowded, and you continue to come up with other projects that we want to do for downtown, like public art and whatever. Nothing against art. I'm an artist, but how much is downtown supposed to take? The restaurants, I have no problem, clear right now. I think the idea of eating out on the sidewalk is fine. But last year, I went around, I counted, and the restaurants had 23 parking spaces for their clientele downtown, in the core. COVID, you know, certainly we were able to help them out at that point. It's not over. None of us should think it's over, but the biggest impact, I hope, we've met, but I don't know how much longer we're supposed to. Is this going to be a permanent feature here in downtown? Because I think the impact of it is, for one thing, people keep complaining. I can't park anywhere. I can't go anywhere. I go around and around. To the point it's like, you know, it's not worse. I go to another town. Easier to get in there. Oh, a good example was recently the last meeting or two where you voted on the apartments and over the tavern there in the corner. Was it Pierce? And the comment there was, they don't have any parking. Well, we recommend they go down to the parking deck to park. I sure wouldn't. If I'm trying to live there and I have to go down to the darn deck a block and a half away while the restaurant clientele takes over everything, forget it. I'll look someplace else. Small businesses in town, besides the restaurants, they're now having to, we were trying to hang on to businesses as it is anyway, trying to encourage other businesses to come in, but with downtown looking the way it is, I'd say, no, I'll go to the next town. Downtown's ugly, and it's crowded, and it's not going to get any better, and then I'm just, the fact if they're setting up their tables and chairs, if they can do that in front of their business, but taking over parking spaces, I'm totally against. I think it's a bad idea, and it's like enough is enough. I think we've gotten to the point where it's time for the restaurants to either sink or swim. I think that what we're donating or designating for them is just beyond what we should be doing. Let's pay attention to some of the other businesses that are trying to hang in there for us. Thank you.
Janet Winningham, I'm just, because of the proximity of Scott's comments, I'm following up with him, and people do not understand that the streetscape plan that now encompasses the parking and outdoor dining item on your priority list, do not understand that the expectation is that the parking spaces will be permanently removed. That is not understood, and it will be a surprise. I agree with Scott's remarks completely, and it is not fair for a few businesses to get the benefit of taking 20 parking spaces away at the expense of everybody else, both time and convenience and money. And the effect is to put stress on every other parking space that's available. The folks that are not able to park in the 20 parking spaces go to the library parking lot. So it's hard to get parking in the library. Saturday at the council, coffee with the council, and thank you for that. I had a short conversation with the mayor asking me if I had trouble finding parking spaces, because apparently none of you ever do. Not always. Not always, but in the summer, yes. As soon as those kiosks and those barricades go up, yes, it's very difficult to find a parking space anytime during the day and any day of the week. And it's bad enough that I would agree that it should be discontinued for the summer. But to make it permanent will be a very negative effect on the ability of people to come into town and enjoy the benefits of the town. Thank you.
Hi, my name is James Kelly. I keep running into distractions and other things going on. I just signed a lease for my new office on Curtis, because where I basically was planning to open up the office, it needs $30,000 worth of roof done to it. And landlord says in 2 weeks, and well, he's been 2 weeks me for about a month and a half now, and I'm not going to open something up and have them rip my roof off. So I leased a place 3 days ago on Curtis. The gentleman's had the building 35 years, and I'm looking forward to, it's like the third time up the bat. I've had this is my third location. I think I'm going to stick with this one because it's a long time resident, Downers Grove. He's had the building for 35 years. He's well maintained the building. One of the few things that this town should be proud of for somebody that actually maintains a building for 35 years. That's history. Well, on a more negative note, I've had an incident involving a young lady being fed drugs. She was being fed drugs by one of her boyfriends that was dealing the drugs at the library, and he ended up getting arrested in a town next door to us. There's still drug traffic going on in the library. The library basically, or the city, who could possibly assist them, maybe a couple of drug sniffing dogs, to walk through town, walk through the train station, walk through the library, walk down the street. I was real impressed the other day. Some friends of mine came from in town, and we went for pizza, and there was 2 police officers walking the beat. I rolled down the window and says, "You guys are walking the beat?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "Great, fantastic." that kind of encouragement is a good thing. There's nothing that we can't stop and encourage completely, but we seriously have to think about and be more creative and bending the curve. There was the individual that's in prison now. He was dealing drugs and nodding in the library. And seriously, I mean, this is supposed to be a learning place, you know, and for somebody to be nodding, tripping on heroin, and dealing drugs in our library, and our children witnessing it, I'm sorry, I've had enough. And then when I had this incident where this lady that can't control her habits, she's clean for a couple of weeks, and then she's dirty again. Her boyfriend, 30 years older than her, are feeding her all kinds of drugs because he has an income. And I tell a police officer about it because the guy turned around and go nuts in the back of my van, and I didn't know what he was using. And he left his cell phone in my van. I turned it into the police, and I went and talked to the police officer, and the police officer says if she wants help, she can get help. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. The negativity and the responsibility of all of us, economically, it hurts everybody in our life, because even city council, and I had a conversation with the mayor, it could be one of your neighbor's kids. It could be one of the city council's neighbor's kids that could make a bad decision. She can get help or he can get help. No, it's got to stop. It's got to stop, or at least curve it a little bit. So what I'm asking for is the city council to make any kind of effort to further the education. We have a lot of people coming into this town from all over, good, bad, and ugly. We got a lot of positive things. I travel all of Illinois, and like I said before, there was one little girl says, my aunt lives in Downers Grove. My aunt's from Downers Grove. I want it to be a positive thing in Downers Grove. I want to be example for all the other towns. I want us to be the leader. And I think we should really seriously educate, get some dogs sniffing dogs. It wouldn't hurt. It's only going to get worse. You've got a train coming through town. You've got all kinds of drug trafficking in and out of that train from Aurora to Chicago. I witnessed it. It's not my job. I'm 63 years old, and I wouldn't be in law enforcement for anything these days. But we seriously have to turn the curve, because it could be your neighbor, it could be your kid, it could be your Johnny. Have a nice evening.
Any other subjects not on tonight's agenda? Okay, we will continue then. Item 6 is our consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously as well. Item 7, our active agenda. Is there a resolution?
Your call.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution removing William Nienberg from the Library Board of Trustees as presented.
Second.
This point, I suspect, is the topic most people are here to talk about, so I'll remind everybody again that we do have some expectations about how we conduct our public comments. One thing I didn't mention before, but I'd like to now, is applause back and forth. That the hope is that this group up here will take input from residents and businesses and people that come and tell us stuff. The applause doesn't really make much difference, guys. All it does is slow stuff down, and then one side feels like they got to cheer louder for the next guy. So let's just go through the process of getting all the public comments and the input into the council out through the next series of people that come to the podium. So if you've got something you'd like to let us know, it's on your mind about this resolution, please come on down to the podium and let us know what you're thinking.
Good evening. Eileen Briner, resident. Regarding Library Trustee Bill Nyberg. Please bear in mind, if Mr. Nyberg is removed on so little offense as that stated in the censure statement, this standard will have to be applied to everyone. This includes Trustee Swapna Gigani, Carissa Doherty, and Director Julie Milovic. Ms. Doherty stated wrongly that Mr. Nyberg does not have a library card. This is not true. I have a picture of his card here. She defamed him with this lie. She should be removed. I understand Julie Milovic at an in-service meeting at the library made the same statement about him not having a library card. That's totally inappropriate for an in-service meeting. Ms. Milovic is guilty of breaking the Library Records Confidentiality Act 28,000 times. A FOIA request for names of library card holders was requested of the Oak Brook, Westmont, Darien, and Downers Grove libraries. The Oak Brook, Westmont, and Darien libraries declined the request based on the Library Records Confidentiality Act. The Downers Grove FOIA officer, Julie Milovic, returned 28,000 names to the request. This is a direct violation of the law. Seems to me Julie Milovic should be fired for violating the Library Records Confidentiality Act. She violated state law 28,000 times. Board President Swapna Gigani showed extreme rudeness to a resident and called police to remove him. She needs to be censured and removed. Remember, you're setting the bar here tonight. The censure document says Mr. Nyberg is being removed for violating Act 4, Section E of the bylaws of the Board of Trustees. There is no Act 4, Section E, or Article 4, Section E of the bylaws. If this weren't so serious, it'd be funny. But it is serious. And it seems we're dealing with the gang who can't shoot straight. You may say this is extreme. Well, don't set the bar so low then. Mr. Nyberg has not broken an Illinois statute or even a bylaw of the library. Yet he is the one you're voting on removing here tonight. Without Bill Nyberg on the library board, there'll be no oversight of the director, as she controls all the other members. Board members are not required to think a lot. Please be very discerning in this matter. Thank you for your considerate thought.
Norm Sidler. I'm a resident of Downers Grove. My mother, my father grew up here. They're still here. My sister, her husband, those two boys. My wife and I raised our three kids here in Downers Grove. I grew up riding my bike to our library, studying in high school, college, and postgraduate. I'm going to make a quick comment before I do, and then I'm going to read a statement. I want to thank the council for your involvement in doing what you're doing. I'm going to disagree with, I think, 4 of you tonight. But all of that being said, this is part of the process. And look, this is not easy to do what you're doing. This is not easy to put yourself out there and get involved. So even though I'll disagree with some of you and I'll try to make my case accordingly, thank you for what you're doing. You're putting yourself out there, and that means a lot. I have been a Downers Grove Police Pension Board trustee for 20 years and serving my last term. I've gained a good deal of knowledge on how our budgets operate how they come together and how levies are going to drive our future tax dollars for all of us here tonight. Bill Nienberg is my brother-in-law. He's a great friend. He's a husband to my sister, a father of his 2 boys, a coach for his boys. He wanted to get involved in his community by getting involved in Downers Grove Library Board. As a result, tonight he's going to be charged with misconduct and neglect of his office. I don't know who penned those charges, but I hope you could back them up with facts if they were asked under oath, because that's one hell of a narrative, in my opinion. I'm going to read Bill's statement after I make my statement because he's in Atlanta for his business tonight, or otherwise he'd be making the statement himself. So I'm going to read his statement so that it goes on the record. A quick comment of my own. This is a bad precedent. Please don't vote on this in a vacuum. Play this game forward several steps, as it has far-reaching implications. When we ask our city and citizens to get involved on the board, in any of our boards, should one of them have a disagreement or strongly feel like they want to change things, we are setting a precedence for everybody we're asking to get on the board down the road to say, why am I going to subject myself to what just happened to Bill Nienberg? This has deep ramifications. How will I be treated, and why am I going to subject myself to that? If this is a vote to say we're at an impasse with Bill Nienberg, the board can no longer work together. I say, don't come up with Trump charges. Okay, let's set it clean. Fire the librarian, fire the board, and let's truly start fresh and redo. The library board has lost the trust of a growing group of numbered taxpayers. People like myself that go to work, get involved only when they're upset, but want to convey that they're very happy to live in this town and watch it. I personally think that we have a library that could be a 4-star library instead of a 5-star library. A quiet, safe place that kids can go study, that adults could get away and go read a book, like I did as a kid growing up. I think we can accomplish that at several $1 million below our current $6.4 million levy. The only real solution to me is separate this board from being appointed, let the taxpayers achieve accountability for the largest discretionary line item in our village, and it's growing at a parabolic rate. I will now read my brother-in-law's comments to go on the record. Tonight, the Village Council will vote to remove me from the Library Board of Trustees. I understand that there are sufficient votes to do so, and this motion will pass. To date, at the Council's request, I've been quiet on the matter in the interest of de-escalating and giving room for an acceptable outcome. With that off the table, it's time to set the record straight. The motion before you tonight is born from a library censure that has been thoroughly debunked and remains unproven to this day. The Council should have rebuked this effort at the very moment that it was clear, and a stern warning to the library board not to engage in frivolous pursuits like this, which have now become a normal course of action. This would have happened already if due process or any shred of formal fairness really mattered. Instead, here we are to abandon all principle and give ways to vendettas and politics. To those of you that this is a revenge for my stance against the library's drag queen bingo event that targeted teens, please allow me to double down. That event was inappropriate for a public library. It lacked the dignity that the LGBT community deserves. It was a missed opportunity to build understanding and goodwill by highlighting the many contributions of LGBTQ persons like those showcased in the legacy wall at the exhibit last year. And of course, we know it was deliberately provocative. As I said at the time, and I'll say again now, people in the community who opposed it had every right to do so, and the vast majority of those people did so for all of their reasons, not out of hate or intolerance. So the extent of my removal is a fallout of that. I will happily wear this as a badge of honor. To those of you who justify your support for this action as a necessary step for the good of the library, it's a self-serving narrative that is nothing more than a weakness and unwillingness to stand up for a principle. You think the board has become too dysfunctional. I think your tolerance for democracy and free speech needs a serious check. You've acknowledged that the original censure is unfounded and there has been unfair treatment, yet you still proceed. You admit that there are serious problems with the library board, but you are content to levy a one-sided justice that in reality is injustice that will just cement the library fiefdom, its mismanagement of $6.4 million line item on our tax bill. You say there's too much conflict surrounding the library. I ask, what did you expect? With this much fiscal irresponsibility, poor judgment, provocation, lack of governance, all with zero kind of accountability, as there is within our current library structure, you would think that you'd recognize that there's going to be some uncomfortable dialogue within the board as evidence to start a necessary course of corrective action. Any judgment of my tone or words that were spoken directly, in truth, is as unserious as it is unprincipled. Most importantly, to those of you that have supported me and will vote against this, I want to say thank you. The gratitude is not just for me personally, but also for recognizing the dangerous precedent that this will set for taking a stand on principle. I hope you make a strong statement tonight. I believe that we will be on the right side of this from the moral, ethical, and political standpoint, and this will gain support. Tonight's vote is without a shred of due process. The board censure was a blindside attack on me, orchestrated to happen when I was out of town and could not defend it. The only steps to open a dialogue with council have only been the ones that I've been initiated. I haven't had and apparently won't have any official audience with the council. But you either are content to say that that doesn't apply, or you're willing to admit it just doesn't matter. Cherish standards like facing your accuser, defending charges against you, innocent until proven guilty, not to mention free speech, are all the real casualties here. The residents of Downers Grove who want to see a disciplined, fiscally responsible, and centered library where they can safely and confidently bring their children without worrying what they will be exposed to are being abandoned. The latest activist programming will replace my push for innovation to keep our library relevant in a changing world. Council, you're about to engage in a complete miscarriage of justice. You will confirm and entrench the playbook for library conformists. And since you like to invoke the neighbor at a jewel standard, you're about to publicly disgrace a neighbor who is willing to volunteer and take on what was a necessary change. I have endured personal attacks, inappropriate campaigns by the library senior staff, and a library board unwilling to compromise nor fulfill its primary job of oversight. To be 100% clear, I have done nothing wrong. If my words or tone offended, I am sorry for that. But I will not apologize for my views nor the facts and issues that I have raised. I have always been and willing to work with the board. I contend they're not willing to work with me or anyone else that doesn't comply with these views. This issue is not going to go away. The residents who've been pushing for accountability will not go away. The labor violations are not going to go away. The OMA violations are not going to go away. FOIA requests are not going to go away. They will only accelerate and amplify the efforts to rein in the library and ideally to separate it from the village so that it can truly be accountable to taxpayers. I look forward to that accountability and to the sensibility of our library one day. Respectfully submitted, Bill Nienberg. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Barnett and the Downers Grove Council. My name is Allison Folkerts. I'm a 12-year resident of Downers Grove. I live here on the south side with my husband and 3 young children. I'm speaking tonight to voice my opposition to the resolution to remove Trustee Nyberg from the Downers Grove Public Library Board. What I believe that I'm observing here is not about a violation of the library bylaws. This was just their gotcha moment to censure a board member that I believe has had a target on his back since he was appointed. This is the product of a larger movement that I've been slowly seeing creeping up in the Downers Grove community in the recent years. That we are an inclusive and welcoming committee, that we are an inclusive and welcoming library, unless we disagree with the progressive agenda being pushed by the library board or other like-minded individuals. What precedent, and I know this was mentioned before, but what precedent is this council going to set here tonight? Will the Downers Grove Council hold all of the library board members to the same bylaws? If that is the case, I would expect a similar resolution in an upcoming meeting to remove any number of the board members, the remaining board members, from the library board for their erratic, their unprofessional behavior, and for lying to the community and the residents of Downers Grove about the presence of policies that never existed. Or what we will continue to observe what is on display here, that unless you get in line and agree with every item on the Progressive Library Board agenda, it's an all or nothing approach after all, you'll be censured, you'll be removed from your position, and a warning to the Downers Grove residents, it's not going to stop with the library board. As a parent, one of my biggest responsibilities is to teach my kids to be independent thinkers. I say this because I'm hoping other parents in the room and those watching online or listening at home will step back and question if the community that claims to prioritize diversity is fostering diversity in thought. As Mayor Barnett, and this is the second reference to it, said in a previous meeting, we will be standing next to each other in the Jewel line tomorrow. Our kids will be going to school tomorrow. They'll be playing sports together. What are we teaching them? That if your thoughts on any of the topics oppose the progressive narrative of the Downers Grove Library or any other handful of institutions in this town, that you will be labeled and you will be silenced. I thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Swapna Gigani, and I've been a resident of Downers Grove for over 10 years. In 2017, I was appointed to the Downers Grove Public Library of Trustees to fill a vacancy. After that term, I was reappointed by Mayor Barnett to my current term, which expires in August 2027. In the summer of 2022, I was elected by my fellow trustees to serve as the president of the board. I am grateful that this council is so supportive of members of the community like myself, people who have stepped away from their careers to focus on family and community. I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to utilize my bachelor's in economics, my MBA, and many years in the banking industry. Following my shift away from my career, I had the opportunity to be involved on a board level with many local organizations, including the Education Foundation of District 58. In the 6+ years that I've served on the board, I've dedicated my time not only to preparing thoroughly for every meeting, but also taking the time to acquire more training and visit the library in person to witness daily operations and challenges. It is this dedication that I believe is essential for anyone seeking the role of trustee. In a dynamic village like Downers Grove, I do not doubt that it is very possible to find a highly competent individual who is also a library patron. The library has continued to quietly march ahead, meeting and exceeding goals outlined in strategic and capital improvement plans, while outside groups attempt to alter public opinion through dissemination of false and incomplete information. Since 2018, the library has completed over $3 million in capital improvements with no special assessment or bond revenue. The approved library levy amounts for 2017 through 2023 have resulted in a decreasing tax rate year after year. Our levy increases are less, cumulatively, than inflation over the same period using the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI inflation calculator. The library has also come under budget every year since 2017. All of this has been accomplished while seeing a record increase in use and over pre-COVID levels, when many peer libraries are still under pre-COVID levels of usage. The library has also seen significant successes not directly related to budgeting. As many are already aware, the library was named a 5-star library by the Library Journal, a distinction that is awarded based on the relationship between library expenditures and service output. Late last year, the library completed a very successful strategic planning process, one that involved over 4,000 village residents. Most recently, the library formalized an agreement with District 58 to provide all students with library cards. I share this information with you tonight to put to rest the notion that the library or its board is failing to deliver on its responsibilities to provide the public with the highest quality institution in the most fiscally responsible manner. I would like to thank you all for your efforts in addressing the challenges faced by the Downers Grove Public Library, and I do support removing Trustee Nienberg. It is my hope that future trustee candidates are more capable and willing to work collaboratively with fellow trustees in a manner that best serves the library and the public. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Slater, a 36-year resident of Downers Grove. My view of well-run library is one where when you go into it, you see a variety of books with different viewpoints, and you cannot even tell whether the library board or the library staff are on the left or on the right. We should have all points of view reflected. Now, I've found that that's not the case. Just two recent examples. First of all, I'm an economist by background. There was a book I wanted to read by Milton Friedman, Nobel laureate from University of Chicago. Didn't have it. there are plenty of books from more liberal economists on the shelves here. Secondly, I just recently asked to get a copy of another book by Dr. von Mises, another Nobel laureate. Downers Grove Library didn't have that either. Now, they have been good about ordering them from other libraries in the system, but it's pretty clear there's a bias on book selection. Again, I think the function of the library is to provide library services that are desired by the community in an even-handed way. It's not to be a promoter of trendy social activism. As far as the motion tonight, there's basically one person on the library board that's not a leftist. I like diversity of opinion, and it looks like your vote might get rid of that diversity of opinion. We need a library board that reflects the community, not just one viewpoint. So hope you have the wisdom to turn down the proposal to remove the gentleman from the library board.
Hang on one second. Hey, guys, I get it. We all get it. Everybody in the room gets it. What is it about a neighborly conversation, which is what we're trying to have here, where one group of neighbors tries to ask for and get the input of another group of neighbors, that causes people to feel like they just don't want to pay attention to the rules? This is a meeting with a structure on purpose. I obviously can't make anybody do any one thing. But are you helping yourself or hurting yourself, do you think?
I think we're helping.
Yeah, I think you misunderstand.
This is a group that is going to continue to listen. There's probably going to be less people that get a chance to speak if we take a few minutes to clap between everyone. And then eventually this group is going to deliberate and make some sort of a decision. Your input's valued. I would encourage everybody to work hard at trying to be neighbors and respect the rules of the room. This is the rules of the room. It's not a matter of opinions. It's not my opinion versus your opinion. It's not her opinion versus that person's opinion. It's the rules of having a public meeting. It's the rules of public engagement that we're trying to maintain here. I'm going to ask again. I'm hopeful that you guys will try and follow the rules of the meeting. That's it. It's that simple. It's really a pretty easy thing. Please.
Okay, I would kind of agree with that, except for the fact that what you're proposing tonight is exactly opposite of what you're suggesting we do here. The board is trying to remove somebody from the board who has a different opinion. And that is why you're getting the response from here. This is a Downers Grove Library that espouses open-mindedness, diversity, inclusion, and yet at the same time are being so hypocritical in removing someone for a very bogus reason, because he doesn't agree with their philosophy and their ideologies. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll agree with Mayor Barnett to please hold any applause. Good evening. My name is Noel Manley, and I'm a resident of Darien, Illinois. About a half hour ago, we recited the Pledge of Allegiance. And who can tell me what the last four words of the pledge are? And justice for all. This is a fundamental value of fairness, and a fundamental value that we Americans hold dearly. You know, things like due process, the 14th Amendment, and the right to confront your accusers. But we're here in Downers Grove tonight, where it appears that due process does not apply. So Bill Nienberg, do you have anything to say in your defense before you're found guilty? What did Bill do to get 4 commissioners to dispense with due process tonight? Was it his doing his fiduciary duty for the Downers Grove taxpayer? You know, asking tough questions and expecting reasonable answers? Was it his attempt to bring consensus? Was it his challenge to the library's budgeting process? Was it his challenge to the divisive anti-Catholic and anti-Christian language in the Native Land Statement? Was it his challenge to the efficacy of promoting divisive events like the drag queen bingo event targeted at children? Or was it his failure to conform to compelled speech by not identifying his self-evident pronouns? I'm going to say yes to all of the above. In other words, Bill did his job for the taxpayer, and now he's being smeared and fired for it. No good deed goes unpunished. So the updated removal resolution indicates that he engaged in misconduct and neglect of office. Those are pretty bold allegations. But as you might expect, the resolution is long on accusation and short on specific example and instance. So how does Bill address these allegations? Well, simply, he does not. No due process, no opportunity to confront his accusers, and no opportunity to put on a defense. Welcome to the woke frontier justice of the Downers Grove Library. You can do a good job, but fail to conform and expect to be canceled. Now that we have misconduct and neglect of office on the table, how will the 4 commissioners now act with regard to current misconduct in the library with the board majority and the library administration? For example, misrepresentations by library administration regarding the window painting policy, mishandling of employee matters, including sexual and criminal harassment by patrons, misreporting criminal behavior in the library, open discussion of a board member's library card during a public meeting, the release of 28,000 card holder names with no redactions. So now that we've gone down this road, if you're not in the favor of the 4 Downers Grove commissioners, you get removed from the library board on specious grounds. However, if you are in the favor of the 4 commissioners, you can violate policy, break law, and you get a pass. 2 standards of justice for Downers Grove and 2 unequal outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy Sullivan, resident 9 years. I just want to stand here simply, I don't have anything prepared. I just want to let you know, I'm also want to look at the board. You put him on this board, knowing the people that already were on the board. I almost feel like you threw him to the lions. And then there was another opening that came beyond Bill, and you continued to put another progressive thought person on the board. Did you not think once or twice that maybe we should kind of get other people's thoughts or different ideas on this board? It's almost like you wanted him to fail. You almost put him in a position to fail on this board. When you're assigning people to these positions, which I'm not quite sure should be the way we do it in the future, we should not, like I feel like as a taxpayer, I don't have any voice here. You all have the power, but yet it's my library. So when you're thinking about assigning people on this board, please assign people with diverse thought. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or who you sleep with. That's not where diversity lies. It lies up here. And I went to many library meetings, and I heard Bill. I saw him try to make inroads with this board. I sat there quietly watching, cringing, wondering, where were other people with his thoughts? Nowhere. Everybody votes the same. Everybody says the same thing. Yay, 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 yay. I want a board that doesn't agree. That's what a good board has, disagreement. So in the future, should you not keep him on this board, I hope you assign someone just like him to this board. Because we need Bill Nybergs in this town. There's a famous line that Michael Jordan said when they asked him about, why don't you get political, Michael? He said, conservatives buy gym shoes too. Well, I take out books too. And I don't feel in this town that our voice is heard a lot. And so as a taxpayer, please consider this when you're making your decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to make a letter I wrote to the council, public record. My name's Paul Drabick. I'm a husband and father living in Downers Grove. I grew up in Westmont and lived in the area most of my life. I'm also a combat veteran from the U.S. Army. I fought for my right to speak and respectfully, Mayor, to applaud or clap as well. I write to you regarding the Trustee Bill Nienberg of the Library Board. I hope to appeal to the better angels of our nature. I'm concerned about the rhetoric regarding Mr. Nienberg's dissent and disagreeableness. Mr. Davenport suggested in a recent email to a constituent that a trustee's responsibility is to, quote, build consensus. On the contrary, the founders of our Constitution would find this statement abhorrent to the very foundational philosophy that the document was built upon. I like to borrow from the wisdom of former Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia as it relates to why our system is best in terms of degree of freedom. Scalia explained that often the assumption is the Bill of Rights. Yet most of the fascists of the 20th century on the left and the right had bills of rights. Scalia asserts that our unique freedoms come from our check and balance system of government. We are a tripartite system with a bicameral legislature with equal powers in each branch. Within the legislature, we have thresholds on votes. This offers each representative or senator an opportunity to both represent the interest of their constituents and a larger constituency based on the leverage of that vote on any given measure. That is what makes us free. This is the brilliance of our system and what makes it a republic or representative form of government and not a democracy. In a democracy, the tyranny of the masses rule. When dissent is not tolerated, tyranny exists. We have the elegance of the Electoral College, which to my dismay I've heard lamented in recent years, but it's the Electoral College that provides a seat at the table for, as some people have suggested earlier, a minority voice, which checks the power of a herd mentality. Not everyone should be subject to the governance of a major metropolis. That is the groupthink for which the founders fought to repress. And so, according to the Constitution, it is not by consensus that we should expect our governing bodies to assess policy. We need the minority voice to be heard, or we will fall victim to the tyranny our government was created to prevent. Look, I understand the temperature of our rhetoric has reached a fever pitch, but you can do the right thing. You could extend in the small slice of Americana an olive branch to the minority voice as a sign of good faith. Perhaps we can lower the temperature of the rhetoric if our elected officials can show a measure of fair governance. I believe Mr. Nienberg will see that olive branch as a mark of progress. In good faith, we can begin to heal the wounds of vitriolic discourse. Please consider binding the community, not separating it further. So look, that was all to say that our country was founded upon the idea that the people can inform the governance through debate, dissent in the public forum. And look, there's no due process here. And somebody else said earlier, what kind of message is that sending to our children? That we have people who disagree, and we have people in power that are willing to remove those people for them disagreeing. Like, I come to a lot of these things, and I understand that our politics has become this show trial situation in a lot of different forums where people get up here and they try to say, the gotcha thing to get applause. So I also understand where you're coming from on that, Mayor. But I think we're missing the forest from the trees here, because dissent is what has happened, but it is from a minority voice, and that is the idea that our country is founded upon, and that is the idea that makes us a fair and free country, is that the minority voice can have a seat at the table in America. So I ask you, if you're willing to remove the minority voice in the spirit of what this country was built on, please reconsider. I thank you for your time.
Tina Chan. For Bill Nienberg to be removed, there needs to be a legitimate reason, and it needs to be a reasonable case with evidence that can be proved and defended in a court of law. The other members of the library board have come up with a false pretense, and these other library board members are stealing from residents the representation that Bill Nienberg is for people who do not want child porn in the library, who do not want drag queen bingo events, and do not want communist ideology of diversity, equity, inclusion to be the cornerstone of the Downers Grove Library. You as commissioners must realize that for you to vote to pass the removal of Bill will be in support of a rogue library board that will further wield power to cancel anyone they don't agree with. And to pass this resolution, I believe, is the definition of communism, fascism, and tyrannical governance. Reject this resolution. You should reject this resolution. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Hallmark, resident of Darien, and really my only comment is a question. I know Mayor Barnett has asked that we not clap and saying that this is a public meeting. I'm not really sure, and that's why I was inquiring to know, is that actually one of the laws within your village council meetings? And the only reason I ask is that I think that because a lot of times you're saying that that's not going to show you either way. You know, in other words, it sounds like your mind's made up of what your vote would be. And all I'm trying to say is that I think that when people clap, that shows you that maybe not all of us want to get up and speak, but we're still there with the people whom we are supporting, and as far as opposing the removal of Bill from the board for no apparent wrongdoing at all. And so that request that we don't participate in supporting them in what they're saying sort of shows that you don't want to hear all of us, even if we're not willing to speak. In the same manner that you say, please don't repeat the same point. Well, sometimes when somebody's prepared a remark, it may repeat on something that somebody else has said because they've come to that same conclusion of a remark that needs to be said. So, though I understand that you want to move a process along, I think that those two requests that you're making are actually, again, trying to silence the people that are trying to speak and give their opinion. Even if they're not speaking, they're just supporting those who are speaking. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Werner Kienkin. I'm a relatively new resident of Downers Grove. I've been here for about 6 years, and then we had COVID and so forth. The reasons I've become socially active again is because numerous things have been said at the library, and it was the library that got me to become involved in social activism again. I've come before you several times discussing the inappropriate comments that have been made at the library meetings regarding race, LGBT, and indigenous communities. There has been an attempt made to ban certain books, and there's been no further need to expound on this at this time because I started again wondering, is this really who we are? The library provides an excellent resource to educate the community regarding equity and diversity, which should be the goal of a community. And this community is predominantly a white community. And the question becomes whether or not we want to be open to other people and other religions. We are no longer the community of the 1950s. If the library board is an independent entity, then the board's request to remove Bill Nyberg should be honored. I have seen him involved in some of the meetings with some divisive comments. And those divisive comments may be that the library is anti-Catholic. But yet, even though the papacy has condemned things that were done to Native Americans in the past, and to put that as a part of history is not an anti-Catholic statement. Further, we should support the library and its programs so that we can move further and become a diverse community. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kent Conness, and I use the library fairly frequently, more than I used to. But the truth is, this item shouldn't be on your agenda. It shouldn't be taking up any space on your agenda. It shouldn't be taking up any time on your agenda. I've been on a board, a different board, and when I first got on the board, there was one guy on the board that was like, this guy's a jerk. You know, he was asking annoying questions. And to make a long story short, I finally realized that, you know, this is good for the board, that board I was on at that time, because it stretches our mind, makes us dig a little deeper, makes us think a little bit longer. And it's okay. We're all grown-ups. We can deal with it. And, you know, the easy way is like, oh, this guy makes me too uncomfortable, too unpleasant, you know, it disrupts our meetings. Let's just get rid of him. You know, frankly, that's a little bit childish. I think this whole effort to publicly censure him, publicly remove him, is mean-spirited, vindictive, and unnecessary.
My name's Bo Martin. I live in Downers Grove. I've lived here for about 20 years. There's been a lot of very eloquent comments made. I have one that's just very basic. I started going to the library boards towards the end of last year, and in one of them, there was a motion to pay for the cost of education courses taken by library employees. Sorry, I'm told that all the time. Sorry. Thank you. There's one board member who asked, how many people do you think will take education courses and have it paid by the library? It's a really simple setup, I thought. How many people, that's A. How much will each course cost, that's B. What will the total cost be, that's C. Mr. Nyberg asked that question. No other person on the board had any other questions. There was no response from the people representing the library, and the motion passed. And so I think it's really helpful to have someone on the board who asks really basic financial questions, and the only person doing that right now is Mr. Nyberg. So I hope you keep him on the board. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Forrest. I've lived here for over 40 years. If you fire Bill Nyberg tonight, that is the equivalent of blacklisting him. Blacklist is the act of a group or authority who compiles a blacklist of people or entities whose views or opinions were deemed politically inconvenient or troublesome, and then subject them to termination or difficulty finding work. History has not been kind to those who blacklist. This is not how you govern. And I want to remind you that we appointed you, and elections do have consequences. And if you vote to fire Bill today, we will work to make sure you are fired in the next election. Thank you.
Good evening, Ed Briner, long-term resident of Downers Grove. My comments tonight are for the Village Council, but even more importantly, for the Downers Grove residents that are not attending, tuned in this evening possibly, and unaware of this unfounded censure of Bill Nienberg. I and many DG residents oppose this unfair censure, calling for his dismissal, as the allegations are trumped up, questionable, and more than likely false. The charges that have been brought by an unelected body that has overstepped its boundaries, its authority, by creating its own kangaroo court. Justice is blind, they say, so where's the justice? Mr. Nienberg is guilty, even though he's never been allowed to defend himself. Some important facts about the library. The library, under direction of Ms. Milovic and Trustee Swanton, have failed in their #1 duty in keeping the library safe for children, while at the same time lying about it. And as I stated last week, Ms. Milovic and Swanton have a history of lying and making bad decisions. Let's review the lies. And since when is lying okay? Drunks in the children's room. Milovic claimed in a board meeting this has never happened. Yet I have from her the incident report that it did happen at the library. Then they lied to a DG resident regarding the guidelines of DG window painting. Then they lied about why the library drag queen event was canceled, stating it was about threats to the library staff and the library itself. Well, the police determined and confirmed there were never and no credible threats. The library still to this day pushes this false narrative. Let's review the bad decisions made by the library and Ms. Milovic. The drag queen event for our kids, with Aurora Divine, games, prizes, and a short drag performance. Imagine men dressed like women encouraging your 10-year-old to sit on their lap. Bad decision. Community rejected that event, fortunately. And then we have the RGW Discovery Report by racial justice profiteer Rashida Washington. Cost to the Downers Grove taxpayers, $86,000. Let me give you a little summary of that report. Downers Grove is racist, especially the North Side. Get that, North Siders? The DG library staff is racist and too white and too educated. Further, the sham report was literally a carbon copy, almost word for word, from the same racist report Ms. Washington sold to Glen Ellen's library and to a company named Access Living. By the way, the company Access Living, their name was not even word checked and removed from the Downers Grove Library report. Ms. Milovic and her team of trustees, not including Mr. Nienberg, spent approximately $157,000, taxpayer dollars, with this racial profiteer. Almost as much as Ms. Milovic's annual salary of $160,000. Employee treatment. The appalling story told last week by Regina, a former library employee, how she was treated by Director Milovic and other staff members and finally terminated for little to no reason. And as she further shared, many other library employees today are currently working under fear of similar treatment and possible termination. Name disclosures. You've heard this tonight. The disclosure of 28,000 names of DG library card holders by Director Milovic, which is illegal according to the Library Records Confidentiality Act. So many bad decisions. What this censure has uncovered is the library under Milovic and Swatna is a disaster The last thing that should happen is to remove the only sensible trustee we have, Bill Neenberg. Rather, there must be at least a full investigation into the lack of safety. I've heard a little bit about drug use and so on in the library tonight. The lying, the bad decisions of Director Milovic, Assistant Director Rajewski, Trustee Swanton, and all the trustees, not including Mr. Neenberg. Mayor, Village Council, make a good decision tonight. Dismiss this censure, fire Milovic, and build a new balanced board of trustees around Mr. William Neenberg. Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Mack. I'm a lifelong resident of Downers Grove and a lifelong resident or a lifelong patron of the library. Bill Nienberg is my only voice on the library board. And it was said earlier that Mr. Davenport mentioned that it's Bill Nienberg's job to provide consensus. He's a lone dissenting voice on this board. And where is the duty of the other board members to provide consensus, taking into consideration his dissenting views? I think that's a very short-sighted view and very narrow view of Mr. Nienberg and the board. Thank you.
I didn't expect you to come up here again, but I actually was abandoned from the library. I was given a letter. The funny part is I kept the letter and frame it because I don't need the library if they're not going to change and better and improve their service to the public, the children, the responsibility of what they're there for, the education. There's been multiple times when something doesn't work, the handicap cart doesn't work, you can't get any assistance. Everybody walks around like they're unhappy and they're unfriendly. I'm talking about the employees and basically the people that hang at the library. You know, I feel sorry for them because, you know, it's becoming a festering wound and it's gotta stop. You know, I haven't even tried to go back to the library. What was funny is that Coffee City Council was this Saturday. It's like, I wonder if I'm allowed to go to the library after I'm banned from the library with Coffee City Council. So I decided to take a pass. Take your library back. I plan on staying in town. Take your library back, make it a balance, make it where everybody's involved with the community and keep it that way.
Scott Melrose, I'm a resident of Downers Grove for 7 years. A few weeks ago, I got the chance to observe this board operating in the working room on some zoning issues for part of town just east of here. And I noticed it was kind of remarkable. There was cordiality, there was disagreement was encouraged. In fact, the reasons for disagreement were encouraged and explored. Everyone got their chance to say, everybody got a vote. It was okay if you didn't agree with the majority on a particular vote. And I'm wondering, why shouldn't the library board act the same way as you do? Are you going to sanction that? Are you going to let that board operate in another standard other than the ones you use with yourselves? I shudder to think of where we're going if you allow that. Thank you for your time.
My name is John Frigo from Downers Grove. And you know what's interesting, this meeting started off talking about how to get people more involved in the community. I've never been to a government event, city council meeting, and a buddy of mine told me about kind of this whole story going on, and that's actually what brought me out here tonight. So that's what got me involved. And ironically, the friend who told me about this is a gay gentleman. And one thing that he's commented to me numerous times in the past is, why does any event that includes, LGBT, anything, why does, he used the word degeneracy, I'm not going to say that, but why does everything have to be nudity, clown shows, drag queens? How about an LGBT, entrepreneurship event or small business event, something besides the whole cliche, nudity, kind of these kind of crazy things like that. So that's kind of what brought me out. I think there's probably a small number of people who would be upset about anything LGBTQ, whatever. And there's always going to be those people out there, but I think this drag queen event was specifically divisive. Everybody knew it was going to cause controversy. We brought bomb threats and protests and whatever else to our community. I think everybody knew that's what something like that would turn into. I don't know why it had to be what that type of event was. Also the things with the $160,000 for a divisive speaker consultant to come in. I'm sure there are plenty of wonderful people promoting inclusion and trying to bring awareness to issues who would have done the event for free just to try to bring people together. I don't know that we had to pay $160,000 for that to happen. And I'm sure there's probably people out there who could have not called one side evil and not been divisive. So, this whole entire thing is what brought me out tonight. And, I wouldn't want 4 conservatives on the library board. I wouldn't want 4 liberals. I think diversity of thought and opinion and checks and balances is always good. And, I guess that's kind of all I got. Thank you.
Good evening, Hillary Dank, 433 Wilson Street, Downers Grove. The only reason I'm coming forward, you've gotten my written comment. I know I've spoken to most of you about this topic, but for those who are watching this for the first time, might be tuning in because of some publicity from Gene Ives or Dan Proft, I just want you to know that the voices that you're hearing today are a small minority of our community. They are people who have brought the divisiveness to our library board. The divisiveness has been dealt with for 14 months. It's been 14 months. Bill Nienberg had many opportunities to work with these trustees, all also appointed by this mayor. And I just want it to be clear to anybody who's checking in for the first time on this issue, it's been a very long and difficult 14 months for the trustees, for the library staff, and nothing productive has been coming from those bringing up these issues about the DEI contract, which is actually incredibly helpful and is happening throughout the country and is really important for our communities. And the other issues that are being raised, bringing books from other parts of the libraries. That's why we have an interlibrary system, so we can get library books from all over the region. We have a nonpartisan village council and a nonpartisan trustee board, and it's become terribly partisan because of Awake Illinois and Proud Boys showing up at our meetings and disrupting them and creating problems for all the people, including our trustees, who are receiving incredibly terrible threats. And this is not something that has just come up tonight or within the last month. This has been a long-term issue for the people in this community, and I appreciate the Village Council for taking up this issue. I know it's been a really difficult thing to do. I appreciate those who have listened to all the voices. No one wanted to be here tonight. This was something that the trustees felt they needed to do in order to function going forward. So I thank you for listening and appreciate all you're going to be doing. Take care.
We're not going to cut this off, but I am going to stop again, guys, and ask for some help. We have a question in front of us. We have a request from the Library Board of Trustees, and we have a motion on the table, and we're discussing that. There is nothing about asserting whether or not you have the majority view, or asserting what you think someone else's motivation, or what group is sitting behind somebody who wrote a letter that is going to help. Because everyone in this room is entitled to their opinion. Every single one. And it doesn't matter where it came from, whether it originated from within their own heart or they got it from their neighbor and they got the information. I don't know how to say this, but that idea that we're going to come to this microphone and talk about what we think each other's opinion is and how we think that's minimal compared to the community is nonsense. It's BS. It's unprovable. It's not helpful. Everybody in this room has a legitimate reason to speak, and they're going to be given that opportunity to speak. Do not come to this microphone and talk about what you think your neighbor's motivation might be. Don't do it. You don't know. That's what the one thing I know for certain is nobody in this room can look at the guy next to them and know for certain what their motivation is. Stop. Do not do that kind of thing again. Can we do that? Can we agree to that? Can we agree that nobody out there knows what's in my head or my heart? Please, let's try and stay on track. We want your opinion about this motion in front of us. I don't want to hear about what you think somebody in the library did 4 years ago. I want to hear what you think about removing Bill Nienberg or not. Please continue.
Mayor, can I raise a point of order here? I'd also like to remind everybody, we've heard a lot about free speech and whatnot. It flows both ways. So everybody else has had a chance to talk at the microphone without anybody interrupting them. Give that same chance to everybody else. Please. Thank you, Mayor.
Please continue.
Hi, I'm Cindy Matthew. I grew up in Downers Grove, moved away and moved back about 5 years ago after I had a kid. Went to District 58 schools. My kid is now in kindergarten at District 58, and I just wanted to speak up in support of the library itself. I moved here in 2019 when my kid was about a year and a half. The library was a source of community, as it is for a lot of people when you come in somewhere new. That is how you meet people. You go to story time, you go to the library, you go to events. The library staff is incredible. I actually know a couple of them by name in the children's section. I don't know, I'm not going to debate the accuracy of things because I assume you all have much more information than I do. The board president has spoken and she had a lot more information. I assume you all have the information. I just want to support the library itself. They're incredible. I think we have such a wonderful library. We have so many events, and hearing someone say that it's okay to take away a star, it's just such a weird thing for me. Don't we want a world-class library and institution for our children? Because libraries are so important to communities. It's where people gather. Last week, the library had an Eclipse event. I know a bunch of kindergarten moms, we all talked about it, and a bunch of them went. It's a great place from community. Our library is doing a great job. I think a drag queen event is fine. If you don't want your kid to go, don't go. But I don't love the hatred that was put forward by this community when all of that happened, that I felt. To your point, I'm not going to say what anyone else felt. And for the clapping thing, I also just want to note, I didn't intend to speak tonight. I just really felt like I needed to defend the library. But I think the clapping makes those of us that don't agree feel a little scared to speak or scared to. And so I just want to say I really agree with the rule. There's reasons I think we have that. And so that's it. Thank you.
Others? A lot of folks haven't had a chance yet. We want to hear from you if you're up for it.
Christine Martin. I've been in Downers Grove almost 20 years now. I spoke already last council meeting, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much, so forgive me that I am just a little bit. But the removal of Bill Nienberg is not the first time that this has happened. Our Jaros was removed. I found that absolutely horrific. I had originally been possibly slated for library board myself. I'd been looking forward to being on library board, and there were people on this board right here, this council, that went and somebody that actually just spoke up here a little while ago, that actually went and pulled my social media posts off of the internet, Facebook, what have you, maybe Nextdoor, and it was used against me to say, you can't be on library board because we'll come after you. We'll pack City Hall. I was told this by very, very good sources, and I know who on board did that as well. I know who in the audience just stood here and did that, even to the point where my child was messed with at school, St. Mary's, because of it. So again, forgive me, I know I said this last week, but Bill Nienberg is being taken off this board for what everybody here has said black and white. It is his opinion, and it's wrong. I wasn't on library board because they knew I was a conservative, and they did not want a conservative on board. So it's just depleting that this is even there, that we have to be here repeatedly saying, do the right thing. It's obvious. It's America. And America is crumbling because people are fighting. We're infighting as families, for God's sake. That's horrifying. Our foundation is crumbling. And it's because we don't respect each other. Frankly, I have a hard time respecting the other side, especially when it comes to this library issue, because I am first and foremost for children. And when you step across that line and you compromise a child's innocence, that's where I draw my line. And so that's why I have a hard time agreeing with the other side. That's what it is for me personally. But this is not about Bill Nienberg sending an email, and we all know that. Anybody that's got a brain and is logical thinking and rational thinking, this is to do with politics. You don't like his opinion. And it's just tiresome, and people need to have faith in the council again to do the right thing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. On to the council. I'll remind everybody we are in a tough spot because we've been asked to consider this. Right? So I don't know where this leads exactly this evening, but please know that's what's going on. We've been asked to consider this by another body in town, and that's what we're about ready to do. It is some of us up here have been through this more than once, and it is kind of the opposite of fun. Nobody wants to go through this process, and I appreciate everybody coming here tonight to tell us their viewpoints on it and feed us the information that you've fed us over the last several weeks that we've been discussing it. I'm certain everybody up here has been spending time reading all those emails and talking with people. I know that I've heard from people and talked with people that I haven't heard from in a long time, so I guess there's a little bit of good there. But it is a difficult thing. It is not the kind of thing that your council wants to do. I'm sure it's not the type of thing that anybody in this room wants to do this evening either, but we're going to start in tonight, debate it up here, and we'll see where this leads. Does anybody on the council want to start a conversation about this? We need to talk about this here. We need to get going and have a conversation. Leslie, go ahead.
There have been a lot of rumors flying around about tonight's vote. If you're looking to my clarity as to why I support this, I have no doubt that FOIAs of my rationale that I have provided to Trustee Nienberg are floating around, and he has yet to respond to my email. However, I am not going to use my position up here to publicly discuss the details of an individual's appointment or removal, as that is left for executive session. Again, you are welcome to FOIA my emails if you would like it, but I don't think it's appropriate. It would be like HR speaking with other staff members about their business. I will simply state that there is ample evidence to support that Trustee Nienberg has not acted in the best interests of the Downers Grove Public Library, and in some cases disparaged marginalized populations and minimized their harassment by board meeting attendees. He consistently comes to meetings of those which he attends unprepared. This goes against the bylaws and creates an unsafe work environment for staff and fellow trustees. Coaching and conversations have been offered from my understanding. In my case, after I was supposed to meet with him and my daughter ended up sick, so I had to cancel a coffee because I had to stay home with her from school. Despite reaching out to reschedule that offer, I was never taken up on it again. I know I'm not the only one who had that happen, and due to these reasons, I support his removal on the basis of neglect and misconduct of office. I want to be extremely clear that the 7 of us sit up here week after week with vastly different values and views on governance. We agree on a lot of issues and we disagree on some, but at no point have I ever felt unsafe as a result of our interactions, or felt as though any of my colleagues are actively trying to cause harm or disruption to our village and its services. Unfortunately, from what I have seen, I cannot say the same for Trustee Nienberg and his relationship with fellow trustees. Many of my colleagues in the past have stated that removing Trustee Nienberg will not fix the problem at the library and have used this as a reason not to vote for this motion. But I think that's why we must move this forward and also be vocal in condemning the accusations and assaults that have been hurled at the library, at members of the LGBTQ+ community, and those wishing to teach a more inclusive version of history. Because this has nothing to do with political affiliations and everything to deal with
folks, come on.
dangerous extremism that is taking hold not just here in Downers Grove or the western suburbs, but the entirety of the country. And I understand that may mean upsetting some of our base, but in reality, we need to be acting on behalf of the whole community's interests. In fact, I talk to my conservative neighbors, I'm sure everybody is shocked, all the time at the bus stop, walking around, about the library. And I haven't met one that for the life of them can understand why there is a contingent of people who do not patronize the library and yet have a lot of feelings about what it should and shouldn't be. While my neighbors may not have understood Drag Queen Bingo, and they didn't, they recognized that it was an event that was for them. And they believe that it must have held value for some and simply chose not to attend. An event, I might add, and has been repeated here today, that Trustee Nienberg said was not the best of what we had to offer, except that it was an event that was planned in coordination with youth LGBTQ+ groups, meant to be a lighthearted celebration for National Coming Out Day. You see, we all too often spend that day discussing the fight for LGBTQ rights and the pain the community has faced, rather than celebrating their existence and individuality. The event was meant to be joyful, planned in part by the LGBTQ community members who were going to be attending, and instead it turned into fear and cancellation as a result of threats. And yes, the Downers Grove Police Department has told me themselves that they considered them threats, and an almost 2-year-long crusade against the library. And this is why we have statistics like LGBTQ+ youth are more likely to face threats of violence and are 4 times as likely to contemplate suicide. Because instead of celebrating everyone's basic humanity, this is what we've turned this into.
Point of order, Mayor.
Go ahead, Leslie.
I have also heard from colleagues that the library has been struggling for a couple decades, which is particularly interesting given it is mostly coming from people who have been sitting up here the longest. Either village councils of the past have not been effective in fixing whatever the perceived issues are, or perhaps the issue does not lie squarely on the library itself, but in part our own expectations or biases of what it should be. Of course, the fact that we have a 5-star library that's well respected in its field and has won numerous awards apparently means nothing. Do I think the library board could benefit from additional governance discussions? Absolutely. I think we all can. And some trustees I've spoken to have expressed their interest in attending other municipalities' library board meetings and taking additional trainings on how to improve that process. From what I understand, Trustee Nienberg has not taken that up yet. The language that has been hurled at library staff, at trustees, at and about historically marginalized populations needs to stop. This does not improve the village of Downers Grove, but rather it's meant to sow distrust in our institutions and instill anger and fear in our residents. Our library, our schools, and our village have exceptional leadership who strive to meet the needs of all, regardless of race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, religion, socioeconomic status, and other measures of diversity. And sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes our implicit biases overlook things. But make no mistake that our institutions are safe and strong. I will not sit up here and allow any of them to be denigrated in the way that we've seen over the last 4 years without speaking up, and it's not just the library. My request to everyone out there is to take some time to reflect on these behaviors, like yelling out at your, fellow residents. Are you treating others with the respect that you want to be treated? Have you had those one-on-one conversations with people that make you uncomfortable? Or do you simply show up to make inappropriate statements and leave before a meeting concludes? Don't attend other opportunities to engage in meaningful dialogue, and don't get back to people when they offer a coffee. While we as elected officials absolutely need to sit here quietly and let everyone say their piece as a First Amendment right, it does not mean that based on these very public statements that people will not face consequences for their actions, for example, breaking bylaws of institution. Throughout this process, I've been accused of lying about threats to the library. I've been called a thug, and I've also been called various other silly names. I signed up for this, and I can take it. While it's not right for even us to have to face harassment, we chose to be public officials. Library staff, our LGBTQ+ community members, and others didn't sign up for this. So I will use the role that I have up here and the role that I have in appointing and removing board members to prioritize the safety of staff and other trustees and the sanctity of our public institutions, which is why I put this motion forward. And I genuinely hope that my colleagues will join me in calling for more conversations about civility and acknowledging that people have the right to live as their authentic selves within their own basic humanity. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sure there's others that have more to say up here. I'm just wondering if the audience is going to respect this group the same way we respected you guys. Because we could just stop if you'd like. I thought we all came here to have a community conversation. And I thought everybody understood there were an odd number of people up here because sometimes we have to make decisions that we don't all agree on. We had a comment before that I was kind of happy to hear, that there was some recognition that the council tries to engage in a behavior and engage with each other in a way that's positive. Why can't we get that back? I am going to say something tonight or tomorrow or next month that somebody out there doesn't agree with. Aren't you sort of assuming that? I am. I don't think it deserves some sort of big groaning moan as though it somehow is diminished or ridiculous. Every one of the people up here that has something to say has as much value and as much right to say it as every one of the people out there that comes to the microphone. That's what we're doing. We're governing with each other. It will be ugly, it will be messy, it will be uncomfortable, you will hear things you don't like. That is guaranteed. It is not just tonight, it is not just the Library Board of Trustees. If that's your only interest, that seems like a failing of the rest of the community. We'd love to have you guys here every week if we could all have actual conversations. So I can't make anybody behave. I don't have that ability. This thing is just loud. It doesn't really actually do anything. But we're not going to continue to operate if we can't operate in an environment where we have a mutual respect and a mutual trust that we're doing the best we can, even though it may not be something you agree with. That is for every single person that's up here. Please try and give this body the same respect that we give you guys. Respect is not defined by agreement. That's not how you define respect. Respect is defined by agreeing that there might be times you don't, and you still trust that person to care about the relationship and about the world they're serving. And that's what everybody up here is doing. Man, I hate saying that. Does anybody else want to weigh in and tell us their thoughts on this motion? Danny, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, everyone, for coming out or reaching out to us over the past few weeks. And also thanks to my colleagues for, like was mentioned earlier today, for going through this process that none of us, I don't think, wanted to go through, and talking things through and actually listening to each other and considering each other's viewpoints. I think that's one thing that makes us a well-functioning board. With that said, I can't help but feel vicariously embarrassed by the process in which this was brought about, shining light on what I believe to be further disarray. The rationale provided for this motion, in my opinion, is not only factually wrong, but I fundamentally disagree with the intent. Starting with Mr. Nyberg's failure to support the formal position of the board, he doesn't always have to agree. We don't always agree, and not everything has to be a rubber stamp. His social media account is not registered to Bill Nyberg, Downers Grove Library trustee. It is my understanding that speaking from one's personal social media account, not the library's account, not a political account, inherently discloses his beliefs as his own. Additionally, the document that was attempted to be shared was not only not marked confidential, but tagging this as a violation of his duties goes against the very principle that we always strive for, to bring the public along and receive input and get everyone's opinion before voting on it. If I'm being honest, I very well could have done the same thing at some point in time. And I don't think there's any evidence that points to a lack of preparation. In fact, during my conversations with him, he seemed to be very well versed, very well prepared, and I could tell how much he genuinely cared about the library's operations. I just don't believe Mr. Nyberg said anything wrong, offensive, or illegal. It is my opinion, regardless of how we twist words or their intent, that Mr. Nienberg often provided a perspective that is not shared by the rest of the board, and in actuality has not violated any of the said bylaws or acted in a way that I feel is inappropriate for his position, which sometimes means questioning and disagreeing with other board members and possibly staff. I don't believe removing Bill will fix this board or address the real issue, which is why I am not in support of this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Martin? Greg?
No, go right ahead, Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also want to thank everybody for participating. This is, with all its ugliness, unfortunately sometimes, this is what governing is all about, and community participation is very important. So whether people called, emailed, met in person, or came to see us here, we appreciate your input. But we appreciate even more when it's all done with civility and decorum. Certainly the message is received in a much more pleasant way in that environment. All that being said, I have a little bit different take on this because I've said this before, but the library is not a recommending board of the village council. This is not a zoning application. Their resolution is not a liquor license application. It was basically a request, just like anybody here in the audience can make a request. We have, contrary to what some people have borderline scolded us for, we have no moral obligation to act upon that request. It was a request. And candidly, in the many years that I've worked with the library, and this is part of the reason why some of the things haven't been fixed, is that when the village council makes requests of past library boards, they were met with a smile, but a no thank you. So we can't make them do things, they can't make us do things. Let's just get that straight. What we can do is we can appoint people to run the library, to be trustees in the library, and we can either fund or not fund the library. Those are the only two things that this board can do. That last one kind of isn't really a legitimate option in most people's eyes. So what we have tried to do over the years is to appoint trustees. Some stay, some don't stay, but ultimately they are trustees and they do what they want. So we have a arm's length ability to try to address things with the library. This isn't about the library, though. Can I just make this also very clear? I mean, I studied at the library for my finals in high school. My kids studied at the library for finals in high school. We have a great library. It's a wonderful library. That's not what this is about. So it's not the resolution from the library that is the issue. And in fact, we have no obligation to consider it, other than if we wanted to. What we do have to consider is when a member of this body raises a matter and there is a motion and a second. So we have a motion for a resolution to remove a trustee that is before us. It has been seconded, so we have an obligation to consider it. So that is what I'm looking for, and that's what I'm going to consider. And someone else mentioned it, but I just want to point out, because the resolution that has been moved and seconded is asking us and me that effective immediately, Trustee William Nienberg is hereby removed as a member of the Downers Grove Library Board of Trustees due to the misconduct or neglect of office. Wow. That's a really high standard, and it deserves an appropriately high level of scrutiny. This isn't a court of law, so we're not having witnesses, we don't have evidence. I'm not going to quote you statutes or things like that, but just to give everyone an idea, and my colleagues an idea too, is that the terms misconduct and neglect of office, if you can look at various definitions, but it usually includes something like willful violation of the law, harming persons or property, or attending meetings under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So, okay, real high standard. But again, this isn't a court of law, so it's not a beyond the reasonable doubt. I'm not suggesting that everyone has to do that or we have to have evidence or witnesses, but just in my mind, I can't get away from that. That standard isn't even close to being met here. Not even close. I haven't heard one thing yet that comes even within a time zone of that standard. It's no surprise I've never been happy that this came before us in the first place. And again, I just said we don't have to consider the resolution, but there is a censorship resolution that the library put forward that has 3 points in it. Those 3 points, I've looked at it, I've read it, I've talked to people, I've read the documents, I've read the bylaws. I mean, they are at best specious and probably demonstrably false. I mean, they just are. I mean, just read the documents, and that's not what they say. The misrepresenting position as a trustee is a stretch at best. I won't repeat what was said by Commissioner Glover, but the bylaws just don't say that. I mean, even the language of the resolution is has all kinds of wiggle room in it because it was written as though somebody wasn't quite sure it was going to fly. It just doesn't rise to that very high standard that I mentioned. And the third point is that Trustee Nienberg refused to work, or stated he refused to work with the other board members on any issue or policy after a motion that he put forward in January of 2024. I've done my own asking around and determined that's just not true. In fact, Bill Nienberg, Trustee Nienberg, has a history of working on other boards for this very village. He didn't just pop into the Downers Grove one day, show up on the library board. He worked in other boards and commissions very effectively. Now, other people who have worked with him on, say, the Economic Development Commission, for example, say that, yeah, he had some pretty strong opinions. But they were very valuable, and they contributed to an overall good solution for different issues. So this is not somebody that didn't have a history of working well with others. Sorry that this all happened here. That's unfortunate. But I just don't buy it. It's not misconduct or the neglect of office. Comments have been made about not being prepared. Well, if you read the bylaws, which I encourage people to actually do, it says that, you know, if you don't have to come to a meeting if you notify the president or the library director in advance. There's no evidence he didn't do that. So that's just not true. I've read the social media comment and statements supposedly made on behalf of the library, not even close. So the reasons that have been given for why this came before us, and I know there are other things that have been said, but I don't think any of those things that I've heard rise to this level of misconduct or neglect of office. And it's pretty serious. The other thing that has always troubled me about this is that the library's resolution, and I have yet to hear a good excuse for this from anybody, other than that we just didn't want to, is why was that voted on the one time that Bill Nienberg couldn't attend? Because the library can't move its meetings? Nonsense. The bylaws, which I keep getting pointed to, specifically say they can do that anytime they want. That's just, it looks bad. It looks very bad. And it sets bad precedent. We've been, again, borderline scolded by some members of the public for not acting fast enough. Or why do you have to hear anything more? You should immediately remove this individual. The community is watching you. Sure they are. But the whole community is watching us. And they're members of this community. They're also watching how we treat our neighbors and how we treat our volunteers. 2 or 3 time volunteer in Bill Nienberg's case. I sure wouldn't want to be treated like that. And I dare say, I bet you every single person in this room would not want to be treated that way. Everybody. Even those, regardless of how you feel and how you plan to decide this issue. I also heard, and I think this board, and I commend my colleagues for taking the time to mindfully and soberly consider this issue. We did get some pressure from the audience, and you know who you are, that we weren't moving fast enough and we should act immediately because there was some moral imperative to act accordingly. First of all, that's not true, as I said earlier. Second of all, people are watching, and how you address these things is super important. Fundamental fairness to our neighbors and to volunteers in this community. But I also was told by some speakers in emails and in person that we needed to act immediately or the library was immediately in jeopardy of crumbling, being destroyed. The library board president stood up at that podium earlier tonight and told us the last year and a half has been extraordinarily successful. Achieved 5 stars, listed a whole list of accomplishments off. All those were during Bill Nienberg's term, mind you. So I understand that maybe things weren't as well as they should have been, and again, I don't have an answer for that. I would like all our boards to function very well and deal with disagreements in better ways. I wish that the library had dealt with this themselves in a better way without bringing the divisiveness here. But we are the ones that have this power, so we've been asked to exercise it, and we have to act accordingly. So I just wanted to say that because some of the things that I've heard is that we have to act immediately, and I want to thank my colleagues for taking the time to consider this appropriately. I think that was the right thing to do. I do think this removal sets a bad precedent, and the bottom line is, given what's in front of me, and the motion that has been made and seconded again, asks me to find even though this is not a court of law, to find that basically Bill Nienberg engaged in misconduct or neglect of office, and I do not find that to be the case. I have not found that to be the case. Frankly, I don't think anything I've heard comes even close to that standard. And again, this isn't a court of law, so I can't cite you a case with a standard, nor should I. But in my mind, my interpretation of what that standard is, this ain't it. So I will not be supporting this resolution with all due respect to my colleagues. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Craig?
Thank you, Mayor. In the words of Monty Python, and now for something completely different. First off, the standard that has been referred to tonight comes from 50 ILCS 6/10. I would point myself to Part B here, which says that removal under this section is in addition to any other method of removal provided by law. And since his name was mentioned tonight, I wasn't planning on mentioning it, but in the case of Jaros v. the Village of Downers Grove, we found, and the Illinois Supreme Court confirmed, that this body, through its home rule power, has the authority to remove the trustee. Misconduct is not necessary, and because of this subsection B, removal under this is in addition to any other method, which is our home rule power. I don't believe the misconduct standard needs to be met. That said, I believe it is. References have been made tonight to due process. This is the process that is due. And if Mr. Nienberg wanted to come address us, that podium is available 3 times a week between 7 and whenever we gavel out for public comment. Folks come and talk to us about any manner of things, and he has not taken advantage of it. We can't speak as to why. Apparently he's out of town on business, and hey, I missed last week's meeting on business. That happens. But if he wanted to come and make his case, he had the opportunity over the last month. He has not. Second, it's been discussed tonight that there's selectivity in terms of what's in the library. I don't think the library can really house every book ever written. I actually had to send out for a book pretty recently. It's titled Counsel to the President. It's the memoir of Clark Clifford, who was White House counsel under Harry Truman and Secretary of Defense under Lyndon Johnson. A couple of Democrats there, and yet his book was not in the library. So, hey, that's why we send out for it. So it's a process that works. Returning to Mr. Jaros, I would submit that he was removed for less than this, and it was a unanimous vote, including at least 2 of my colleagues who are up on this dais now. And it was suggested that he's worked well with others in other situations. That may well be true, but there's video evidence that says otherwise in this particular context. And I'm going to return to my prepared comments now. Those who would try to make this about viewpoint are setting up a red herring. This has never been about viewpoint. It's never been about conservative, progressive, anything else. Opposing views are necessary. The only way that I can be certain that I can say what I want on a matter of policy is making sure that Bill can say what he wants on a matter of policy. So this, at least for me, this has nothing to do with viewpoint. I referred to video evidence. When you look back at some of the meetings, you see that he doesn't exactly conduct himself with decorum, with what was the word that was used earlier? Cordiality. He's conducted himself poorly, and I think that's a poor representation of the village and a poor representation of the council that appointed him. It renders him ineffective as a policymaker because he's isolated himself from his fellow board members, and that's a strike against him, in my opinion. But in a vacuum, it's not enough to remove him. It's been reported to council by email that he stood by while an individual or individuals screamed, including obscenities, at library staff. That's a pretty big strike against him, if you ask me. It demonstrates terrible leadership. Yet in a vacuum, it may not be enough to remove him. But we don't live in a vacuum. There are people in and around Downers Grove who have made it their mission to drive certain library staff out of this library. They can't get enough votes on the library board to make it happen, so they're choosing to do it through a constant drumbeat of harassment and accusation. Supporting those who are trying to drive staff away is an attack on the library as an institution. Disrespecting the policymaking process by attempting to forward draft documents that have not yet been made public. And yes, perhaps one of us could have done that too, but we get draft documents all the time. And staff asks us to keep them confidential. We keep them confidential until they're made public. And when you try to do that, you're undermining the library and the board as an institution. Mr. Nienberg has recognized his role as a fiduciary on the library board. And by taking the actions I've detailed, he has breached his fiduciary duty to the library and the community at large. If you want the library director dismissed, go get the votes. Those, including Mr. Nienberg, who would make this about a conservative viewpoint versus any other, only call attention to yet another breach. Mr. Nienberg is not the conservative representative, as he himself stated in an email to us. He doesn't represent any conservative constituency. His constituency is the entire village of Downers Grove, regardless of race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, or any other marker you might want to put out there. To those who have advocated for more conservative voices on the library board, heed this advice. It is entirely hypocritical to engage in viewpoint-based advocacy one moment while decrying it the next. In the end, two things are clear. First, that Mr. Nienberg fervently wants to change the mission of the Downers Grove Library. At this, he has been unsuccessful through board action. Second, Mr. Nienberg, through his words and actions, has chosen to join with those in the community who have created a hostile environment within our library with the goal of driving away staff. Mr. Nienberg cannot be permitted to destroy the institution he was appointed to protect. I will be voting in favor. Now, as an aside, what about it? As an aside, those who argue that our library isn't safe astound me. I mean, there are times tonight where I felt like there's a bunch of us living in an alternate reality. You know, my kids go to the library all the time. My teenager goes there unaccompanied with her friends all the time. I never have felt like it was an unsafe place to send my children. But we have trustees and staff asking to be escorted to their cars because of the words and actions of some of the folks that we've heard from on this issue, maybe not tonight, but at other times. And this is entirely unacceptable. I mean, the First Amendment has bounds, right? I mean, let's respect each other. You don't get to yell fire in a crowded theater, right? And if you want to engage in calm discourse, and I want to thank those who did tonight and who asked for decorum, because we can disagree and we can do it while being residents and neighbors and, dare I say, friends. But you can't take the actions that Mr. Nienberg has taken and expect there not to be consequences. Thank you, Mayor.
Others? Mike?
Sure. Just want to set part of the record straight. This council has no authority to hire or fire any library staff at all. So for those of you who think that we should get rid of the director, it's out of our purview, one way or another. So I prepared a short statement. I served for 16 years on the Architectural Design Review Board, 12 as its chair, 12 years on the District 99 School Board, 4 as its vice president during the pandemic, and now almost a year on this village council. I know what it's like to be in the minority and the patience it takes to gradually build trust and respect, even with those with whom I disagree. Insulting people, rants of frustration, and a poor attendance record at meetings aren't a great strategy. Nor is publicly sharing private documents and information, regardless of policy or law. These aspects of Trustee Nienberg's tenure greatly overshadow his work so far. And unfortunately, though, the Library Board of Trustees demonstrated a sense of unfairness in holding a censure vote without a chance for Trustee Nienberg to defend his conduct. And some of the conduct of the board president in her exchange with the public was regrettable, to say the least, but was not without provocation. For this and other reasons, I believe there's dysfunction apart from Trustee Nienberg's service. So who's to blame? All of us, but especially a lack of decorum and respect by some citizens at the trustee meetings. We're also all guilty of a lack of sufficient support for library staff and trustees who feel threatened, mistreated, and harassed. The village council also shares this responsibility. We have taken a hands-off approach to the library for decades. It's clear to me that we need to take a more active role and to find ways to better support the Library Board of Trustees. I intend to advocate for this in the weeks and months ahead. Specifically, I think moving the trustee meetings to the council chambers on a permanent basis should be considered. Limiting terms to 4 years instead of 6 should be considered. And adding a 7th member to the board are ideas this council should discuss with the trustees. Some formal mentoring might help as well. However, I'm most interested in the Library Board of Trustees becoming an elected body directly accountable to the voters, as is the case with most library boards in the state of Illinois. For now, the trustees serve without direct accountability to the electorate. They hold themselves to account. 5 members of the board have essentially petitioned for a recall election and put Trustee Nienberg back on the ballot. I am one of the 7 people who must now vote. Trustee Nienberg hasn't conducted himself in a manner worthy of the public's trust and has neglected his duties. He has been absent from too many meetings. He has been unanimously censured by his fellow trustees. And because of this misconduct and neglect, I will be voting to remove Trustee Nienberg from the Library Board of Trustees. To be clear, this isn't about his differing points of view. To remove him for this reason would be as wrong as keeping him solely for this reason. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things before we get into my prepared statements. Our responsibility is not only to approve, but also to remove. And I think to characterize that he was removed on the one time he couldn't attend is a little misleading, since there were a number of meetings where Mr. Nienberg was not in attendance. So I thought those are important to clear up. As always, I want to thank you all for your participation tonight. I am aware this is a very difficult situation for many, and I can assure you that the idea of removing someone from a board is not what this council wants to spend its time on. As you've heard earlier, we've had many positive things to look forward to with our guiding DG. We're going to learn a little bit more about our progress a little later, but annual budgets for our village look great. The metrics look great. The same can be said for our library. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to the work of moving our village forward. Having said that, we have a formal request from the library board that needed to be addressed, and tonight through this resolution, we are doing that. I should say we are concluding that. For those of you who have followed, aside from the many one-on-one conversations between those of us on the board, multiple executive sessions, this council has approached this resolution with the seriousness it deserves. Prior to the introduction of this resolution, at the request of concerned citizens, library staff, and library trustees, I have been watching the library board meetings since November of 2022. I've met with many residents, I've read every email that has been sent, and I've had conversations with each of the trustees who requested Mr. Nienberg's removal. I also attempted to have a conversation with Mr. Nienberg a while back and was ignored. So just for the record, there was an attempt to reach out during the drag queen bingo controversy. I had to reschedule, much like Leslie, and was when I tried to reschedule, never heard back. While I cannot claim to know all the interactions between Trustee Nienberg and the library board and staff, what I have seen at the meetings and what I've heard from residents, trustees, and library staff regarding Trustee Nienberg has been concerning for me. The Village Council's role in relation to the Library Board is limited to appointing and removing members. Given the decision before us, one I take very seriously, I've tried to approach my decision from a human resources lens. We have a legitimate request from a team whose staffing that we oversee, and approaching it this way, I think, is an effective way to remove bias when evaluating this decision, basing it largely on answering 3 questions. The first question is this person an effective member of this board? I've seen Trustee Nienberg's behavior at these meetings, where he has demonstrated, in my estimation, no sincere effort to support the mission of the library or to make the library better. and no sincere effort to work with the balance of the library board and its director. His attendance record does not demonstrate the level of commitment or effectiveness I would expect of a trustee, especially one who voices so many deep concerns about our library. Trustee Nienberg has clearly lost the trust and faith of his fellow trustees, and because they made that a unanimous request to remove him, because of that, they made this unanimous request. Not after 18 days, not after 18 weeks, but after nearly 18 months of trying to figure out how to work with Trustee Nienberg. It is extremely difficult to be an effective board member when you have alienated yourself from the remainder of the board. The second question is, do the actions of this team member support the premise of effectiveness? When Trustee Nienberg does decide to attend meetings, he seems poised to use that time to lambast his fellow trustees and the library staff, often done by twisting and ignoring facts. These charged tirades, which he has every right to do, demonstrate his desire to pander to a disruptive minority, feigning victimhood, stoking disruption, and seeking to generate a false narrative about the operations and safety of our library. It seems more important for him to do that than his desire to be a responsible and collaborative trustee. His attempts at undermining the board and staff are documented, most recently by his effort to share a file that was not for public distribution. Additionally, through the last 18 months, I, along with the members of this council, have received multiple emails from library staff with specific concerns about the actions of Trustee Nienberg, primarily around the safety of the board meetings and his willingness to work with other trustees. These behaviors clearly contradict any claim to support the premise of effectiveness and raise questions about his suitability for the role. Through his own actions and statements, he has effectively rendered himself an ineffective member of this board. And the last question, does the team member have the ability or willingness to change? And this is the question that holds the most value for me, because I have an understanding that being part of a collective decision-making body does require change, not in your values, not in your opinions, but in how you conduct yourself to be most effective. I have gone through this myself in my professional career, and certainly here on this dais as a member of this council. It has been over 18 months, and I haven't seen any willingness on behalf of Trustee Nienberg to change. Not to change his beliefs or values or opinions. Those are his own. He has every right to them and to speak to them and in support of them. It's about changing the way you operate as a board member, and I've seen no effort to do so. During this time, it's my understanding that Trustee Nienberg has also been approached by members of our council, including the mayor, to ask him to tone down the rhetoric and make more of an effort to be collaborative. It has made no difference. And maybe, in what I find most telling, is in the light of these concerns, in the light of the request for his removal this resolution, Trustee Nienberg doesn't seem to show the slightest bit of reflection or ownership or humility in any of his formal responses to his body, including the statement that was read to us tonight. His communication to the council has been simply denial, defiance, blame, and victimhood. Based on the lack of support from the balance of the board, his lack of effectiveness, and his lack of willingness to change, I'm compelled to support this resolution, and I will vote for it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? So I didn't prepare anything tonight, because I thought what I'd do is start by listening to my colleagues, and then I'd listen to the audience, and I'd listen to my colleagues again. You've heard me say lots of times, nobody wants to be here, nobody wants to be in this chair and doing this right now, because it's lousy for our community. We've got 100 people here, and every one of them is aggravated to some degree. I agree with Commissioner Glover, I agree with Commissioner Tully. I won't repeat what they've said, but my biggest problem with this whole thing is who owns this mess. I do to some degree. Each of these people that's on this board, I had a role in either appointing or reappointing. This council does, because we've had a role in appointing and reappointing, either approving or actually selecting people. And so the problem I have with the resolution tonight and the taking the action tonight, I don't want to own what I think is a lousy process. If I were in these shoes, the shoes of Trustee Nienberg, I would expect different. You can't make somebody behave any more than I can make somebody stop applauding tonight. Not possible. But as a group and as an organization, as a community, we can expect and ask more. And one of the things that I've found is I've talked with, I think everybody up here has done their due diligence and tried to talk with employees and trustees on the library as well as residents with strong feelings about this. But I'm seeing a group that got pretty dysfunctional pretty fast. I don't know whose fault that was. Pick a side. They go like this. But then what happened for the next 18 months is those two groups decided to avoid each other. There was no collective, as this body has done over the last 15 years or so, of getting together and trying to sort out their differences with only that as the agenda. A one-off conversation in the dark is not the same as a group that gets together and says, we're having trouble getting along. What are we going to do about it? You know, it's one thing to say that Trustee Nienberg missed a lot of meetings and suggest that somehow that covers the timing of the censure motion, except that it doesn't. It doesn't, because we can change anything, and this body does that. In fact, if you were watching us, you would have heard us earlier this year or late last year kind of lamenting some of our workload because we want to make sure that each other is here for the things that are important to them. We want the flexibility in the agenda to do just that. So when that group over there selects to hold a censure meeting on a meeting they know in advance the person that they're going to censure is not at, and then when asked to revisit the scheduling of that, just simply says no, again, I'm thinking this is a really lousy process that I don't want to own. I get that they did it. I get that they have the authority to do it. I don't want to own it, because I wouldn't do that with any of my colleagues up here. It's lousy. Maybe in a conversation like that, some things would have come out. Maybe some opportunities for people to change would have happened. Maybe some people could have got along and talked about the things where they talked past each other. I don't know, maybe not. But the process is not one that I want the village to be taking ownership of. I just think it's bad. You know, we talk about, and we've heard about that we've had this hands-off process for many years, and that's true, because the library has been structured the way it is, and they've kind of insisted on that. There have been various efforts in the past at trying to exert some influence here or there, and they've been roundly rebuked and pushed away. Now, there's a problem, and we ought to fix it. That's not fair. It's not fair to the library. It's not fair to the residents that think the library is managing themselves. It's not fair to the village council. It's not fair to Bill. It needs to be better than that. I would much prefer that we take this resolution, this request, I'm sorry, from the library, and we start down a process where, because we've now been drawn in, we mediate something. Maybe it wouldn't be successful. I don't know. But I know that I don't feel good about it, and I don't feel good about anybody up here being put through the same process. So I can't support this resolution tonight. The idea that we would just get involved when some group, subset of people, trustees, gets mad enough at themselves, but not try and mediate that, not try and show the example and demonstrate the way this council operates, I think is a failing. I really do. I understand why we're here. We can go back and forth about the definitions of duty in the bylaws. We can go back and forth about whether there were policies or not. There's obviously a problem within the Library Board of Trustees, and we've been asked to take this one action. I'm not ready to take it unless I have more involvement in getting to that point. So I can't support this tonight. I'm not going to do that because I wouldn't want it done to anybody up here. And I think that's probably fixable. But saying, well, Trustee Nienberg didn't reach out to any of us. Trustee Nienberg didn't reach out to the library board. Trustee Nienberg was the one sitting in the room of 6 that was clearly pushed aside and ostracized and put in a minority. Expecting that behavior is a stretch, I think. Doesn't make any of his divisive comments during meetings right. I'm not defending that. I watched them all too. I think everybody up here watched them. I'm pretty sure everybody up here would have chosen different approaches for many of those subjects. We had a council member in years past who had a similar situation. He chose to be so divisive, he was basically ineffective. And that's probably what's going on right now. But I don't like the process. I don't like the process at all, and I'm not willing to support it. Does anybody want to jump in? Because we are on a short timetable, we're also doing a little bit of discussing rather than just talking about where we are. Martin?
Just real quick, and this is obviously for future references. Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, we had a colleague up here in the village council that did something that resulted in the request for a censure. But it was done in conjunction with that person. That person actually participated in the conversations and the crafting of the censure. So that what was done was actually unanimous. Believe that. The person being censured actually voted for it. And that's because everybody sat down, had an adult conversation, and worked through it rather than taking action when somebody wasn't there. So future point is don't do that.
Anyone else? Okay. This is Rosa. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Nay.
Commissioner Glover?
Nay.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes 4-3. I made a mistake. I started. I meant nay. I apologize, guys. I was kind of walking through my head what I was going to say next. I apologize.
Blame it on the lack of air conditioning.
Yeah, right, lack of air conditioning. Thank you, Martin. My vote was nay. The motion passes 4-3, and what I wanted to say to everybody was thank you for coming. Even if you didn't get the outcome you wanted, stay tuned, because there is going to be a process of replacement. And as Commissioner Davenport mentioned, there are going to be additional conversations about what role the village should play now that we've been asked to play one. So stay tuned, stay involved. We do care what you have to say. It is about 10,000 degrees in here, and it is late, so I'm going to call it for a little bit of a recess. We're going to refill our drinks, use the bathroom, cool off a minute. We'll be back in session in about 10 minutes. All right, we are reconvening here at 9:53. Thank you for those that stayed. Appreciate your participation this evening in the long night. We do have a little bit of other business ahead of us. We have a first reading item. This is the portion of the meeting where we talk about items either for the first time or continuation from a previous discussion, but items on which we do not plan to take action this evening. There's a first reading item. Dave, would you lead us through that?
Yeah, this is an item that is consideration of an ordinance amending the 2023 budget. We actually talked a lot about this last week. Here to present more background information on this item is our Finance Director, Robin Leahy.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment. Actual fiscal 2023 expenses ended the year below budgeted levels for most village funds. 4 funds were over budget and will require budget amendments. The first fund that requires a budget amendment is the general fund. At last week's council meeting, Dave presented the fiscal year 2023 budget closeout, which highlighted the general fund's exceptional performance. These results prompted transfers to the Health Fund, Risk Fund, Capital Fund, Equipment Replacement Fund, and the Debt Service Fund. For this reason, staff is requesting a budget amendment of $4.3 million in the general fund. The second fund that will require a budget amendment is the Health Fund. A budget amendment of $600,000 is requested due to higher than anticipated claims in 2023. The next fund that will require a budget amendment is the Motor Fuel Tax Fund. This fund exceeded the budget due to an increase in the village's local share of some resurfacing projects costs that were done in conjunction with the Illinois Department of Transportation. A budget amendment of $45,000 is requested for this fund. And then the last fund that will require the amendment is the Library Capital Replacement Fund. This fund will require a $5,000 budget amendment because the expenses exceeded the budget due to an overage in equipment and capital replacement projects. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Robin. Any questions or comments from the council? Martin?
Those are the kind of budget amendments that we like to have in front of us. Thank you very much for presenting them. And I'm sorry that I missed last week's presentation, but what were some of the drivers of the very successful general fund this last year, if you recall? I know, unfair question.
Yeah, we had some of our major revenue sources come in significantly over the budget, including sales tax revenues, income tax revenues, home rule sales tax revenues, food and beverage tax revenue, and interest earnings in this interest rate
Right,
environment.
because rates nudged up a bit.
And now I'll look to Robin to make sure I got all those correct. All right, good.
I would have been my guess, but I wanted to ask this. Sorry for the surprise question. Thank you, Mayor.
No, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions from the audience or comments from the audience on this item? Some thumbs up. That's better than
that's
thumbs
good.
down. We like that.
Right.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
And with that, that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Dave. Attorney's report. Enza, you still with us?
I sure am, Mayor. The only item I have to present is that ordinance amendment that was just presented. It will be on the next active agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor's report. Mayor's probably said enough tonight, so I'm just going to move on to council member reports. This is a part of the meeting where council members report out on goings-on in the community, other groups or activities that they're aware of they think the community should know about. We'll start with Martin.
Mercifully, I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Chris.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
I think there's still a couple of tickets left for Passport to Dining by the Grove Foundation, which is Thursday. If you would like to go, they are, I believe, at Anderson Books, or you could shoot an email to either Leslie or me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I'd like to offer my congratulations to Nicholas Elkin, Michael Chico, Paul Lipinski, Matthew Longito, Daniel Michello, Jennifer Norgard, Carolyn Olson, Michael Platsky, Tim Pascal, Volker Rose, Anise Silva, and Walter Wendell. I apologize if I massacred the names, but they're all, these 12 people are finishers in the Boston Marathon yesterday from Downers Grove.
Oh, wow.
So I thought I'd offer my congratulations to them.
Thank you. Danny.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Leslie.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, with this slightly modified agenda this evening, we do have an additional manager's report subject. Dave?
Just wanted to report out, continued monthly reporting out on the priority action items that the council established for this 2-year work period as part of our long-range planning efforts. If you look at our long-range plan, it has a Gantt chart showing all the priority action items that we should undertake during that period. That yellow line shows all the ones that are currently underway. We'll be talking about those remaining 3 in a couple months when we do a long-range planning update. I am very pleased to remind folks that 4 of those projects have been completed. They are shown on the board. They've actually been completed for a couple months, so no new items here. Almost all the remaining items remain in the green category, which means they are on schedule and on scope, with one exception of the Meadowbrook Tax Increment Financing District and the redevelopment agreement. I'll just run through these really quickly. The Civic Center project, if you just look out to our west here, you'll show that we are getting closer and closer to move in. Interior and exterior construction continues. Mike's going to show us a video at the end of this presentation. Furniture installation is going on. We're getting ready for the relocation, so we're moving ahead on schedule.
Air conditioning in that building,
No,
sir?
we cut that. This went so well tonight.
That's how Baker kept us on budget.
We'll make sure that that air conditioning is commissioned properly in that building. We'll have more in the video in a minute here. The next is a series of plans we call Guiding DG. The first one is an update to our comprehensive plan we heard tonight that remains on schedule. Got a great update from Nick Davis at Halcyon on this. The Fairview focus area really has 2 things going. One is at the staff and council level, we are working on rezoning. We just met today with our staff team to get an update on the actual first thoughts about what that rezoning ordinance might look like. We're a couple months away from bringing it forward to the council. And then as part of our Guiding DG series of projects, the consulting team led by Halcyon and Hitchcock Design is working on a streetscape design plan similar to the one going on in the downtown. We expect an existing conditions report on that streetscape plan, I believe in June or so. Another component is our environmental sustainability plan. I just want to take a minute to really commend a new team member, Jason Michnick, who's been working incredibly well, not only with the community and the Environmental Concerns Commission, but also with Delta Institute, who's the consultant on this project. Together, they're working on an existing conditions report, which should be ready in a couple months. And once we have that, we'll probably check in with the Village Council to do a scope and direction discussion, much like we did on the bike and ped plan. We are planning an upcoming meeting of the ECC, where I really think you'll see the work and the quality of work that Jason and Delta are capable of. Downtown streetscape, we just mentioned this, we're looking forward to an existing conditions report on that project. It also will touch on many of the design aspects of an updated downtown outdoor dining plan. Those are so closely related that for now they'll be reported out on simultaneously, and once we know what the streetscape looks like that supports an outdoor dining plan, we'll ask the council to continue to give us policy direction on how a dining plan might operate within that streetscape design. The enhanced bike and pedestrian plan, the council did a scope and direction meeting earlier this month, which was really fantastic, provided great direction to Baxter and Woodman, the sub-consultant on this. We are working with that consultant to present the council direction and move on to the next steps at a Transportation and Parking Commission meeting on May 8th. All of them are working on existing conditions reports, which we will report out to the council in the coming months. Lead Service Replacement Line Act, Lead Service Line Replacement Act. Good news, we did submit the preliminary and first replacement plan to the state on time. Council gave us great initial direction on that first of 4 plans that has to be submitted over the next 4 years. We continue to follow up, trying to make sure we understand which of the service lines in our village are actually constructed of lead. So there's folks from the village team going out to work with residents to make sure we understand what their lead service line is made of. And we are going to take a little deeper dive in probably June or July as part of the long-range planning efforts, where we will discuss water rates, proposed water rates that have different scenarios related to village obligations and policy questions related to who pays for the cost of lead service lines, how much that is, what the state law requires. So more to come on this, looking forward to good policy direction. And we did post that first replacement plan on our website, so if you're interested, you can go just type in lead service line replacement, it should take you right there. Review DEI practices. We continue to do staff training, and I participate in the Metro Mayor's Caucus, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Task Force, and workforce on a variety of topics. This remains something that we take very seriously at the village, and it really has been integrated into day-to-day operations quite well. Video gaming. Several months ago, the council approved a resolution placing an advisory referendum question on the upcoming November 2024 ballot. It's an advisory referendum question. We actually, just a few weeks ago, launched an informational webpage on the village website. It's a great place to get information about what that policy question is, what that referendum question is, and what the council will do with those results procedurally going forward. We'll continue with public messaging, especially as we get closer to that election day in November. Meadowbrook Tax Increment Financing District and Redevelopment Agreement. What does that mean? It means that we're working closely with the owner of that shopping center to improve it using a tax increment financing district that would funnel additional property taxes paid by that center back into the center to help revitalize it. This is shown as yellow simply because we're behind schedule. The good news is, just in the past few days, the owner and his attorney has actually submitted the zoning application materials. We're completing a review of that right now. And the village attorney, Enzo Petrarca, has done a great job working with their attorney to really get on the same page on how we document the key terms in that redevelopment agreement. So it's still yellow only because we're behind schedule, but we are working to turn that back into green very hard. It is proceeding. And then I just had 4 of the 4 that are completed projects here. You know, this presentation is pretty effective, but it is nowhere near as effective as the video that Mike's about to show us, showing us the progress on the Civic Center project. Mike.
Okay, gonna jump right to the video. And here we go.
that, we're happy to answer any questions that council may have on the progress of these projects.
Thanks, Dave.
Where's the applause now?
Well done. Anybody have any? Leslie?
I do. So when do we think that, so the police are going to be the first to move into the building, correct? Because they're the kind of the greatest need. Do we have kind of a thought on the timeline of when we think the police might move in?
Yeah, we do. We just did a quick review of the overall schedule with the constructor and the design team today. That schedule in our contract calls for Q2, substantial completion of the building, and a Q4 completion of the whole project. We're on that schedule. It will take several weeks to move in over time, so we'll get more detail on in the coming weeks as we get a little bit more information, but it generally starts with police equipment and furniture and all that stuff, then the police staff, and then village departments in a phased approach. And we're working on a transition plan that would really focus on informing the public of how to interact with us when we're some in some building and some in the other, and that's been going quite well. So we're on schedule, and it'll take a couple weeks in a phased-in approach.
That's great news. And yeah, just a comment that's related to that. You know, when I participated in the panel this morning, the village manager of Woodridge was also there. I feel like I see him every time I do this. And he was also commenting about how they went through a similar process with their police station, and he underestimated how long that they had worked on that project and that we were facing some of the same things. And it was interesting because we also had a similar conversation about our social workers. So the village of Woodridge had also removed their social worker and then brought it back. And he said that's kind of been one of the big successes that he's seen, is seeing the value in having that. So it was interesting kind of seeing some of our neighbors and how we're seeing a lot of these same results and having a lot of the same successes. So it was just nice to participate in that, and kind of I really thought about the Civic Center as he was talking about his police station success. So thank you.
A lot of what Al Stonich and the folks at Woodridge had learned is in our transition plan, and thanks to Al and his entire team for sharing information as we share with them as well.
Anyone else? How about a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for staying, and good night.